Coming to you from the award-winning Final Third Cigar and Whiskey Lounge, PCA's 2024 Best of Leaf Midwest Cigar Bar, Indiana's exclusive Aladino Cigar Lounge, it's the Final Third Podcast.
Welcome back to another Final Third Podcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Scott.
I'm Mike.
I am Will, and today we have a very special guest with us. We've got Drew Black with Circle City Whiskey Company. So welcome, Drew. We're excited for you to be here today.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you guys.
How do you feel about drinking at 11:45 in the morning?
It's just another day that ends in Y.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
We like to say if you just don't start drinking in the morning, you can't drink all day.
That's right. Well, I hope everybody had a really, really good time on Black Friday. I know we did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was like 2 days ago, and
I'm still wore out.
Yeah, that was a long day.
was
I
a
came in
long
here
day.
3 separate times.
I know you did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
first 2 times we were so packed there was no seats.
Right.
So
Right.
it was
Yeah.
great.
I
It
was
great.
bummed. I had family in town, couldn't make it, but according to you, it was like standing room only pretty much all day long.
It was.
Most of the day, yeah.
Yeah, till about 6, then we kind of
Wow.
had maybe 5 or 6 seats available. So
Awesome.
it was
time.
great. It was really great. Yeah, I appreciate everybody came out and supported us on that day. That made a really good day for us. And I know a lot of small businesses on Black Friday that kind of sets up their holiday season and honestly the first quarter as well. So thank you guys for helping us out with that too. That was great.
Heck yeah.
Great day, but now we got to be back on it because we did a live show, and
Yes.
our tens of fans totally expect to have a podcast on
Every
Monday.
single
So
one. Yes.
yes. So we're back at it. So we're gonna do some smoking and drinking today. Let's
Yeah.
maybe start with what we're smoking,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about
that.
something some
Yeah, kick
special
us off,
stuff
Rob.
here.
Yeah, so we're going to start off, and the reason why, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we're going to start off with the Espinosa Crema. Just a nice, mild to medium Connecticut, creamy, nutty, just a really good, solid morning smoke for me. A lot of people like this all day long, but it's a really good morning smoke. And we decided to start with this one because this, if you're watching the camera, and if not, I'll have to take a picture and post it as well. We had a good friend of our shop come in here, asked us if we would display some of his dad's old Jim Beam decanters. He had like 12 to 14 of them, and he said, I don't want to sell them. I just want to be able to every once in a while see them. I have nowhere to put them. They're in my basement. I don't have anywhere to put them and look at them. Just love to see if you display them. And I wasn't sure at first. I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay, I don't know where I'm going to put them. He brought them in. These things are beautiful. And so we opened one up, and there's actually 4 or 5 of them that have beam juice still in them. And Will and I
Looking forward to that.
just filtered it. We didn't even need to filter it. I mean, we put it through cheesecloth. It's beautiful.
Or not just beam juice, but 14 years, 7-month aged, 1958 distilled beam juice.
Isn't
which
that
is kind of
insane?
very cool. Yeah.
So we know it's going to be lower proof. So we thought a nice, milder cigar, creamy cigar would go good with that. So we are going to get into that right now.
Awesome.
Heck yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It is surprising how many of those are around on those beam. They are actually out there. I don't know what it is, but a lot of people bought them that didn't drink whiskey.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, look at that beautiful bottle.
Well,
Okay, let's buy that.
That's exactly what it was. We think about back in the 50s and 60s, whiskey was not popular.
No.
It was going on the downswing, right? Because vodka was becoming popular. Everyone was rebelling against what their parents and their grandparents had drank in the early 1900s. And the only way you could sell whiskey was to package it.
Right.
These cool decanters and artistic designs and things like that. Because honestly, people weren't really interested in drinking the whiskey. They just liked the packaging. So
Yeah, it was,
Beautiful nose.
referred to as the glut era, and that's, it sounds terrible, but there was some amazing whiskey that was going for $10 a bottle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
The glut era. I like that. I wish we had more of that.
the
Man, look at that in the glass.
you're right though. Some of those decanters that have popped up. I mean, they've created every kind of gimmicky decanter imaginable. I mean, there's
Yeah.
Indy cars, there's every car imaginable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Jim Beam. You know, to be fair, it was Wild Turkey. It was
Yeah.
Old Crow. It was really everybody jumped on that bandwagon.
Oh yeah, I've talked about my
Or
dad's
Commonwealth.
decanter. He had a duck, a mallard.
Yeah.
For like a Canadian whiskey.
They had Beam had ducks as well.
Did they?
Well, they were. I don't know if they were geese or ducks, but I guess they were ducks. They're all white.
The artwork on them are insane. I mean, they're like the turkey ones are cool too. Have you seen some of those ones that are just turkeys?
Yeah, but they're hideous.
They're hideous, but
Yeah,
they're awesome.
They're cool. I have one in a box still at home.
Yeah.
It's already drank, but that stuff is some of the best whiskey. Some of that late 70s to mid 80s turkey.
I agree.
Some of the best dusty stuff you'll ever find.
The aroma on this is so rich.
It's not even dusty. There's
no.
really not a dusty quality to it. Maybe very subtly, but
It was very strong coming out of the decanter. It was very, very, very
Yeah.
strong.
Oh, we
Like,
just
you
when we were starting to pour it, you could just smell the
Yeah.
aroma. I'm like, holy crap.
Makes
Well,
me
yeah,
wanna
the
go
cork
home and
was-
open the ones I got.
yeah.
Cork was in like perfect condition.
Mm-hmm. That's the other thing too with those decanters. They put 24 karat gold all over these things, and like, holy crap, they really put some money into these to sell them for $10 a pop.
And there's a stigma behind these too, where everyone thinks that if you're going to drink out of one of these, you're going to get lead poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're made with lead, sure, but you have to drink probably 1,000 of those in like one sitting, which you would die from alcohol poisoning at that point anyways, to get lead poisoning.
Yeah.
So like it's
Man.
not that big of a deal. There's not that much in there.
No, and honestly, most glass was leaded back in the day.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a hyped up myth, but
That really holds up, man.
It did. Yeah.
You know, I've had a number of these, and every time I think the same thing. They were just trying to attain a perfectly balanced bourbon. And what I really love about tasting some of these old dusties is the comparison of a lot of the new stuff that people are trying to do, the different flavors that they're trying to coax out of bourbon. This was made 25 years after Prohibition ended.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how much was lost during Prohibition, and how long did it take them to master that craft again? And so being able to, create this and go for something that they could sell, because bourbon was just not drank all that much.
Right.
It's just the low times.
Well, see, even the grain was different, right? Like the corn was different then.
Yeah.
How they farmed was different. The
Way less
soil was
pesticides, all that stuff.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a completely different process, a completely different time. I mean,
the barrels too. I mean, the
Yeah.
trees were more mature.
hot older
yeah.
oak, right?
you know,
That's a good
it's-
point. Yeah.
Yeast was different. I mean, you think about like the old Stitzel Weller stuff. Everyone says like, why can't they recreate it? It's like the yeast is gone.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
that,
You can't recreate any of those conditions.
no.
No.
I mean, you can try but it's,
And there's
water was better.
there's a really nice soft fruit note to this that I think is almost like summer Indiana cantaloupe.
It's very
Oh.
specific.
I
Yeah,
can see
I
that.
can't compare to
It's the
things I haven't
softness on the
had.
palate. I think.
That's I mean, it's
I always joke like I'm not the best with descriptors when it comes to whiskey because I grew up eating chicken fingers and fries. And so like I've evolved my dietary habits since then, and I eat, I wouldn't call myself a foodie, but I definitely explore. But I do not. I've got friends that just pick out these notes, and I'm like, I never ate that. So if I haven't eaten it, how am I supposed to
Right.
make that comparison? So, but yeah, I've had a lot of cantaloupe, just not summer.
Not summer Indiana cantaloupe.
yeah. Well, there's you always see it at the grocery store when it finally matures and they start harvesting. All the grocery stores are like Indiana cantaloupe, right? Because it grows pretty well here, and there's some pretty big cantaloupe operations.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's coming from California or Mexico, places like that.
Yeah.
And when the Indiana stuff comes around, it's local. It doesn't have to go through the long shipping process or the forced maturation. You're just getting stuff
Well,
that's off the ground.
Just drive down 41. Just take 41 south, the old way to go to Evansville, and this all cantaloupe farms down there.
Yeah.
Farms.
Yep.
Really cool.
And that stuff is delicious.
You've got my wheels turning though. I think I'm going to look for something with needlers cotton candy grapes notes in it, and I'm using that as
yeah.
a note. I'm using that as a
Yeah,
note.
I like
And I
it.
know people are going to be all over it.
That's great.
Needler's cotton candy grapes.
They're better than Kroger.
Okay. I'm down with that. They just got bought.
Neither's.
Needler's
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
I think so. They
Good for
were
them.
struggling with kind of the wide distribution that they got once they bought out all the old
Marsh.
properties.
Scaling's tough.
It is,
for
man.
any business.
In grocery, it's
Yeah.
really tough. Those freaking margins are razor thin anyway.
Yeah, they are.
So we've got Drew with us. Let's talk about, while we're drinking this and getting into our first third of our cigars, Drew, tell us what's going on in your world.
A lot.
Well,
so
Tell us about you. I don't think we've even talked about your brand yet. So
yeah, so
That's
Circle
what that
City Whiskey Company, we're an independent bottler of American whiskeys. For those that aren't familiar with independent bottlers, have been a thing in the Scotch world for about a century. And effectively, and this kind of leads into my story. Independent bottlers just go around hunting casks, finding barrels from other distilleries. They're not distillers. Sometimes they age them longer. Sometimes they'll recast them into, different finishing barrels. Sometimes they'll blend and create their own, but there's an emphasis on quality and transparency. At the time that I kind of came up with this idea, there was one that had emerged, but I hadn't heard of them yet, and I was introduced to them. Give them a little shout out, which is Lost Lantern, out of Vermont, I believe.
Hey.
But as far as the American whiskey category, there were a lot of non-distilling producers. They weren't transparent about what they were doing. They primarily were sourcing from one source, usually MGP. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not, again, there's an emphasis on quality there. Where we, focus differently is again, variety, working with multiple different distilleries, continually going out and, finding different partners to work with, and then just being as transparent as legally allowed with those folks. And that's really just a play on what I've done forever, which is I ran a bourbon club, and my focus was always on doing barrel picks. Did about 80 of them in 6 years, and whether it was for our club or for local stores. And so, kind of turning that into a business, the idea of, and I fancy myself an equal opportunity alcoholic. So I love all kinds of whiskey. I love cocktails. I love wine, great beer, all of it. But being that I was familiar with the Scotch world and the independent bottling world, something at some point was just like, why isn't this being done? Like, why, and where we differ from a Lost Lantern per se, or a couple of the others that have popped up, is we are very focused on the Central Indiana bourbon, whiskey and bourbon community, building our core here, providing something that is of value for the community, and then we'll grow out from there. And when you ask what's going on, that's what's going on. I mean, we are growing pretty rapidly. We're almost done building our distillery. We should be moved in. We take possession this week, and hopefully we'll have our permit to actually start operating there within a few weeks. And then we're looking at distribution in other states. We're getting asked to distribute in other states, which is good.
That's
but
great.
Our core here is really our focus, whereas the other independent bottlers tend to be online based, focusing on casting a wider net to a national audience, and focusing their sales through online outlets, which again, nothing wrong with that. We just, being born and raised here, we want to focus here.
So I love your call out to Scotch, because it's something I never even really, it's something I knew, but I just didn't think about it. Like single malt versus blends, right? Single malt just means it comes from one distiller.
Right.
That's it. Right. So if you're Glenlivet and you're just doing your own distilling process and putting that into barrels and then bottling it, single malt whiskey. But there's tons of blends. I mean, Johnny Walker's the biggest, blender of Scotch in the world.
Yep.
And they, proudly claim exactly where they're getting their Scotches from, and, the fact that they're doing these blends.
I mean, in the days of it being a bad connotation or a bad, you know,
Taboo. Yeah.
in American whiskey. Those days are over. I mean,
Yeah.
their blending is now well received. Blending, marrying, whatever you want.
Finishing, all that.
I mean, yeah, it's well accepted, and I think people realize. I mean, there's just. I mean, obviously, Drew, you do a great job. You know, K. Luke down in Mississippi. I mean, those guys are they're. I mean, Jonathan. I mean, his blending is phenomenal. You know, you can name half a dozen that are really doing a good job with it. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you had said something, and I'd like to ask a question because I'm not sure the answer to this. You know, you are an independent bottler. You acquire barrels. You find some amazing barrels. You do some. I think you do some finishing, right?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, some finishing and stuff too. But then you said you were opening up your distillery.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of licensing do you have to have as an independent bottler versus at a distillery as well? And I want to also ask you about, are you looking to distill in the future?
Yeah. So as an independent bottler, if you're not going to have any distillation operations, you can operate as a rectifier.
Okay.
It's not any less expensive except for the equipment requirements.
Oh, wait, the state wants more money? Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, they want it's
We're from the government. We're here to.
I don't want to get myself in trouble with
I know, no, don't
going off on that tangent, but I could.
he loves the government.
We love the government.
I have so much faith in our government.
We do too.
But
I can't believe you kept a straight face saying that.
but if you ever want to have a tasting room, which again, we're all about being part of the community, and that's always been on our radar. It's always been kind of the end goal, is to have a local tasting room, and bottle shop. And in order to have that, you have to have an artisan distiller's permit.
Okay.
In order to have an artisan distiller's permit, you have to have a distiller's permit and wait 6 months. So that's where we've applied for. We should have it literally any day now. We've already got our federal distiller's permit. We're waiting on the state, and in our new location, we will have a still. There are also some financial advantages of distilling your own product, and you're able to bypass wholesale distribution if it's at least 60% your own product in the bottle. We're also, as a guild, working towards some legislation that expands that a little bit and gives us a little more wiggle with that. But you know, at the end of the day, whiskey will not be our focus for distillation. I am still a firm believer. I pride ourselves. I say we're a quality control company more than we are a distillery. And it scares the bejesus out of me to lay down distillate, wait 4 to 6 years and find out that, hey, guess what? It's not as good as what I could have bought.
Dog
you
shit.
know? You know, and that story's been told umpteen times. I mean, distilleries have started on MGP to transition to their own, only to realize
we can't do this.
It was bad for their brand, and they had to transition back. But it also set them back because they weren't buying or even able at that time. Things had changed; they weren't able to get as well of aged stock, and and so whiskey, we will always focus on the independent bottling. Will we lay a little bit down? Maybe. We'll see. I mean, we'll call it experimental hobby level at that point. But then again, you know, when you talk about gin and vodka, unaged things that are, you know, you can honestly, if it doesn't turn out well, you can redistill it and, you know, and not be out too much and things like that. There will be a lot of value for us distilling that in-house because we'll be able to run it, you know, use it for cocktails, sell bottles, whatever, to you know, and it's financially advantageous. So there will be some distilling, but it will never be our focus.
Okay.
I should never say never because you just never know.
You never know.
So my dream of you having a 30-foot column still from Vendome, probably not.
I got 12-foot ceilings. So, no, and you know, but you can still actually, it's a little, you could run 3 10-foot columns.
There you go.
Side, you know, side by side.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's something I'm thinking about, because, you know, again, getting on a tangent, I'm a firm believer in column stills. You know, stripping still it strips that graininess off the whiskey first and foremost. Then you use a doubler or a thumper to then finish and, get you to your final proof. But that's my palate. I prefer stuff that's not heavily grainy. And that's just not a knock on anybody who goes the other direction.
Yeah.
Well, I love the distinction, right?
Yeah.
Saying it's a palate thing, because
It is.
we've actually been exploring and had a lot of good experiences with some more grain forward, right? And distinguishing between young versus a grain forward versus one that has the graininess stripped out of it.
Yeah.
And it's whatever your palate
Yeah.
prefers, but being able to get out there and experiment a little bit and figure out what it is.
I would
that you like.
say I would tend to agree. I feel like for single malts, especially like the American single malt category, I feel like pot still's got a place because you're looking for that really rich, robust, oily thing going on that you can really pull from a pot still. And I think it works well with American single malts, but I mean, for bourbons, I'm with you. I like the distillate that comes from a column still. I feel like a little bit more, but that's just me.
Pot still for brandy.
Yeah,
There you go.
because
Yeah.
you want to retain that fruit character
Exactly.
through and through. And yeah, it's I'm with you on that completely. I think at a certain point, some of the stuff I've tasted, and again, I won't name names because I don't want to disrespect anybody, but at the same time, some of the stuff I'm like, okay, is it 51% corn? Does it, is it, was it aged in new charred oak? Does it check all the boxes? Sure, it does. Does it taste like bourbon? No, it does not. And it's tough because craft distilleries are trying to make their mark and be unique. But at a certain point, it's like people fell in love with bourbon for a reason. Like, don't lose that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There is some fun stuff. I mean, you look at the different corn variants, they don't taste like what people think of as core bourbon. Right. You're not going to get a Bloody Butcher that tastes like core bourbon. It's going to be a Bloody Butcher bourbon. And I love Bloody Butcher. I mean, I'm a big fan of it, right? I like all the
We're going to go
variants.
different direction on that one.
And that's okay. I like that. No, I love that.
fine.
It's perfect because it's, I like experiment.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like, I like chasing them down. But then again, I also called out whiskey of the year for me. I said it's the best bourbon I've ever tasted was Russell's Reserve 15.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And to me, it was like,
Yeah.
this harkens back. We talked about this, texted you about it.
Yeah.
Harkens back to, a bit of a nostalgia, kind of like drinking this, because I grew up drinking Jim Beam.
Yeah.
I mean, I was white label, right? 15 years old, out by the fire pit, and parents in the house not knowing what I was doing, drinking Jim Beam. So there's something to be said. And I love that the focus that you guys have from a Circle City perspective is on this core product.
Yeah.
And there's going to be these nice subtle differences that you get from one bottle to the next as you're trying to continuously find what is that core bourbon element that everybody loves.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And something I will say, like, I mean, I love what you said about the corn variants, because we did a project. One of our early partners was Pennington Distilling out of Nashville, Tennessee, and they use a Tennessee white corn. And a lot of their product is wheated, and wheat being a grain neutral, or a neutral grain, allows that corn to really stand out. And when I tasted it, I was like, this isn't going to be for everybody. And we aged it another year and a half before we released any of it. But because it was so funky that I was a little nervous. But then it hit a really nice sweet spot. And a lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it. And that's fine. We do try to find products that are going to be polarizing. I would much rather be polarizing than find something that's middle of the road, because I feel like no one's going to love middle of the road. They're going to like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no one's going to love it. So, and that, that corn, that white corn, man, it's, I mean, you've had it.
Oh yeah.
It stands out in a big way, and a lot of people love it. But some people say they never want to put it in their mouth again.
So that kind of brings a question into my mind. So as a independent bottler, how do you balance that between creating a product for the whiskey geek like us that we're gonna geek out on versus trying to reach the person who is gonna go to the bar and get a cocktail with a basic 90 proof how do you judge like how much you want to put into one versus the other when you're creating your SKUs, for lack of a better term?
So when we first started, everything was cast strength, and then we'd go do tastings, and I mean, especially we did tastings last year at all but one Butler basketball game, and we were in, the majority of the time we were in this large, their Bulldog Club. It's their EFGF, Formson Family Gym, and there's hundreds of people in there, and everybody loves bourbon now, right? So you get the average. I love bourbon guy. Well, what do you drink every day? Woodford's my go-to. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
But that immediately tells me they drink lower proof bourbon.
Right.
And what we quickly realized was, 120 proof scares people off.
Yeah.
And if they're not prepared for it, even though it drinks better than what you would expect 120, because we get that all the time. It's like, it was hot, but it didn't taste like 120. But we'd scare people off. They're like, oh, no, thank you, but no thank you. I don't want to drink gasoline today. And then so we realized, our bottled and bond was our first, foray into lower proof. I wanted to do the bonded because it carries a connotation, an extra level of care and certification, kind of a stamp of quality. But even with that, people were walking up and they're like, 100 proof, like triple digits, starts to scare the
Average consumer.
I try to be careful about, I'm not trying to disparage anybody by saying that, but like, I'm a whiskey nerd. I think everyone around here is kind of nerdy about our whiskey. Like we drink it regularly. We explore into different things. We've gotten to the point where we drink, cast strength whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody, that's not for everybody. That's
right.
Not everybody's goal. And so, then we realized, oh crap. And we were fortunate enough. We struck up this relationship with Butler, and have a licensing agreement. And, as we were coming out with that first batch, we're like, okay, we know the Butler audience. They want it to be 90 proof.
Yeah.
So if we're going to expand our brand, if we're going to meet the masses, I always say, Jim Beam white label, Jack Daniels, all that. Then you get into the more craft or, premium bourbon. It's about this big comparatively. Then you get into barrel strength, and really we lose sight of it because it's who we surround ourselves with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the market for high proof bourbon is tiny compared to the audience that wants something proof down, something that's easy to drink. Bad word, supposedly, and they want smooth. They want something that's just easy to drink, and that's
my least descriptor of all.
Everyone's. I prefer the term approachable. But
there you go. Let's make a hard press change it to approachable.
Yeah. So, it just, yes, our audience is kind of flipped on its head from that. Our audience will continue to be more nerdy bourbon folks like myself. But if we want to reach the larger audience, we have to, so I'd say 80% of our products, 80% of what we're cranking out will be 110 proof or higher. And then, I say that, and then I got a bunch of cast strength barrels that came in 102 to 106.
You're feeding your audience. That's us.
Right.
So
exactly.
You know us.
I do think that bottled and bond as a term is becoming a bit more understood. The Heaven Hill bottled and bond definitely helped the marketplace a lot this year. I do think that 100 is kind of like, okay, my Woodford's 90, right? Yeah. It's 100, and that bottled and bond I know means something. I may not know exactly what it means, but I know my buddies all said that, they're big time bourbon guys. They said, oh, this bottled and bond. They say it all the time, and we can get to 100. Final Third Cigar is Indiana's exclusive Aladino Cigar Lounge. Come to Final Third for a selection of over 20 different Aladino cigars, including the Cameroon, a wonderful cigar with nice light flavors. Make sure and visit Final Third, the Aladino exclusive cigar lounge for Indiana. I'm curious, and I know you don't distribute outside of the state right now, correct?
We work with some online retailers, and we're about to launch a new online shop. But yeah, right now, but as in terms of traditional distribution,
right,
just Indiana current.
So one thing we've talked about is it seems like a lot of barrel proof products are on the shelves in Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio. And you start getting outside of that range and the number of cast strength barrel proof just plummets. And it's interesting to hear you talk about like what you see in this market, which seems to be a bigger market for barrel proof than a lot of the rest of the country. And to say, you know, the market's this big for that means like, you know, nationwide, it's almost
even smaller.
non-existent. Yeah.
It's cold.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, Will, let's go ahead and get into the next bottle, and we'll keep talking too.
Let's do,
So you pick what you want, Drew.
yeah, let's go to the bottled and bond.
Okay.
We're just talking
By the way, I
about-
will say real quick, the aroma just kept opening up on this.
It did.
Like I couldn't help keep going back to
the
this.
nose is stronger than the palate.
You're
It is
exactly right.
Significantly.
Still very good.
It's
but
good.
The nose is
The thing that
Which
I appreciate about it is it still reminds you of bean juice.
Is that what you
So-
appreciate about it?
I do appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. But that's the one thing is like I'm with you. I think the best Dusties I've ever had is the old Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so good. This is good.
Speaking
But-
of Wild Turkey 101, it's also probably a big reason why people don't want to do 100 plus proof
That's true.
because you're in college or high school.
You're
or
at heat
whatever.
level there on that. Yeah.
You remember, I
Exactly.
mean, Wild Turkey 101. I remember in high school, it's like
No, do
It's
you
like
want to get
gasoline.
real, real fast?
80 proof was rough enough for me. I'm like, got some Goldschlager.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kentucky gentlemen used to tear me up.
we would do shots of 101 because it was the cheaper shot at the
Do you got some, bud?
club we would
I got
go
some
to,
here.
and it was like, oh man,
It was like getting the Dark Eyes vodka blue label.
chase it with Coke.
So this is your straight bourbon bottle and bond, which by the way, bottle and bond is always going to be 100 proof. It has to be 100 proof. Has to be in a bonded warehouse. That's really the only rules. It has to be straight
It's got to
bourbon.
be minimum 4
Minimum
years.
4
Minimum 4 years. Thank
4
you.
years.
Thank you.
And all the barrels that go into the blend have to have been distilled from the same distillery
Distillery.
in the same distilling season.
Gotcha.
2 distilling
Okay.
seasons: January to June, July to December.
Okay. Okay. So this one actually is one we have on the bar. We have a couple offerings right now. We'll be expanding that too. So if you want to try this one, we're going to be talking about this one right now.
Yeah, I think we did a tasting. We had an event here last year with Indiana Bourbon and Watch Legacy, and I was up here and I was pouring samples to all the law enforcement supporters that were here for that. We were pouring the bottled and bond because I think the bottled and bond was just released last year.
It was released last year, and it was 4 years. It was 4 years, 9 months,
Yeah.
really, but it was a 4-year age statement.
And a lot of positive comments on
Yeah.
it, a lot of positive feedback from, again, like you said, the non-bourbon enthusiasts, right, that were here, so
I always love this one. And
Yeah.
you know what it goes really well with? Hockey. Really, really sad. You're not at the Fishers Event Center. I know that new venue is always going to present new contract negotiations. So I can only imagine what they wanted to be able to, but they have no craft bourbon that I saw.
I would say
at the event center.
talk to your
unfortunate.
distributor and get them to sell them some cases because they do need to expand their whiskey selection.
Oh,
there.
I politely,
and they will.
I politely hit them up on Facebook and said, guys, your bar is a little
you
sad.
did. I saw that. Yeah.
Well, I even talked to a couple of the people that I work with as being a sponsor there too, and told them that, and they said they're looking to expand it. That was basically opening night.
I kind of figured that was the case. It looked
Yeah.
like there's a lot of open space there.
There
and that
was.
They were kind of trying to judge like, where do we go without buying 100 cases of something that then just sits.
Mm-hmm.
See what people ask for, what they need to get in there. So
But again, yeah, get into your crowd. That's what they have to do.
I'll say a few things. One of the things I really, really respect that they're doing is, first of all, I want to say, moving to Fishers, smartest thing they could possibly do.
Mm-hmm.
People were nervous to drive from Hamilton County, which, if you're familiar, Hamilton County is the largest season ticket holder for Pacers and Colts. That's the audience they're after.
Yeah.
That audience was nervous to go down to the fairgrounds at night. I think it was totally fine. I went to many games, took my kids, loved it.
Yeah.
The thing I love that they've done is in moving, they've kept the ticket prices the same.
Yeah.
The owner is a firm believer that he wants it to be something that's accessible for everyone.
Except for a $3 per game administrative fee.
Is there? Okay. Well, fair enough.
Scott's not bitter.
Hey, but in doing that, obviously this facility is not less expensive for them. So they've got the suites, they've got, and then obviously another area that they're trying to make it up is with corporate sponsors.
Yep.
The number they threw at us, they offered us some pretty attractive packages, but we would have to sell a lot of bottles.
Yeah.
I tried to get them to create some sort of commitment with us, create some exclusivity in the whiskey category. I'll be the first to say, and it might get me in trouble. I don't care. Concession companies, which they don't have a concession company this year, but they've brought in somebody from a concession company. And so the traditional concession model is very risk averse.
Yeah.
It's let's bring in Beam, Jack, Makers is their premium.
Yeah.
And I love Makers. It's not,
nothing wrong with any of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they want to, they're always going to have their domestics. They're a little more open when it comes to beer. I think they're less scared of that. But when it comes to the spirits category, they are just scared to make any commitments. And that I think was a huge mistake. We offered to make a product for them to offset those so that we could protect ourselves in the investment.
Sure.
It was substantial. And I still say nobody's going to walk up and say, I'd like a Beam and Coke, and then be like, hey, well, we actually have a nitro fuel in Coke, same price.
Right.
And then say, oh, never mind. I'm just not going to drink tonight. Like, come on.
Right.
You're a whiskey and Coke drinker. You've got a captive audience. It's a win in Rome situation. They're going to take the alternative, but they were very risk averse in their choice to not do that. Maybe next year that'll change.
And I get why they think that way, because they're not in the whiskey world.
Sure.
But I mean, that's one of the reasons why I don't have regular white label Jim Beam. I don't have old number 7 Jack in here, because it's not because it's bad. Nothing wrong with it. I tell people all the time, if Jim Beam is your favorite bourbon of all time, you just won the freaking lottery.
Yeah.
Because you can buy it everywhere and it's cheap.
Yep.
But what we try to do is, like, someone says, oh, I want a Jack and Coke. I'm like, oh, we don't have number 7, but we do have bottle and bond. We have bottle and bond rye. We have bottle and bond bourbon, or Jack. We have other ones, triple mash, all these different. I'm like, would you like to try something different? They're like, oh yeah, I just want whiskey and Coke. I'm like, all right. So people actually order it. Just like, say, you go into a restaurant, you say, give me a Coke. If they have Pepsi, they're giving you Pepsi.
Yep.
It's no different with that.
Yep.
And I think it's just education for people that are actually buying at that point.
So then are you going to try to get into the Noblesville Event Center?
Yes. And
you could be the exclusive and probably only sponsor of the Mad Ants.
So they're not going to be called the Mad Ants anymore.
I know. They're going to be the Noblesville Noodles. I want them to be the Noodles, but
I don't think that's going to be it.
I don't think that's going to be it.
They haven't announced what it is. I was actually with a couple city council members yesterday. And,
did they leak it?
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They said I think it's coming out in the next week. So
I work for them, and we don't know what it is.
But it's I'm a Noblesville resident, and they actually pushed it. They were like, well, you should. We were having this same conversation, and they're like, well, you should become the new sponsor of the Mad Ants. Well, it's not going to be the Mad Ants, but I'm like, hey, let's talk. But
the Noblesville Drew Blacks.
Yeah, but there you go. But it's got to be, it's got to make financial sense. Obviously, there's marketing value to it, but at the same time, we need to move bottles. To offset just like you guys. I mean, you're not just sponsoring it because you love hockey. You need to drive people in, and it needs to make financial sense. And I hope it does, because my kid fell in love with hockey last year because of that sponsorship.
That's awesome.
I've always liked hockey, but I fell in love with hockey.
Yeah.
It's and with them being closer, I was excited to try to get something done, but it just it didn't make sense right now. Things could change in time, and
getting your product in there would actually be good, because then if people are starting going, oh, this is really good. I want to go buy it at the liquor store. And then they come back in and they start seeing their product move. Maybe they offer you a better deal down the road. And also, you're a little older. You have a couple more years under your belt, and all of a sudden I got a little extra money to spend on advertisement.
It
And
was
it
one of the
means a
biggest
lot.
feedback items.
Yes, it
Everywhere
was.
it
Like
is.
parking was not, nobody was upset about the parking, like lack of spaces or anything. There was some questions and confusion around how to pay for it. And some people were kind of confused about a couple other things. But
Yeah.
honestly, there was a lot of feedback that the bar is
Weak.
woefully weak.
Yeah.
And it's kind of surprising because they did a
that
great
way.
job with the food, but
It's become that way with the boom of whiskey. People want to be able to drink good whiskey when they're out, and the same thing was said at Clues Hall, you know, and we have our Bulldog product in there, but gosh, it was like pulling teeth getting their concession company to work. And fortunately, the powers that be at Butler were like, no, we're doing this, and we want to actually bring in more than you are comfortable with, because it's a finite availability of product, and we want to make sure we have it for the next year.
Yeah,
Like,
You're a Butler grad, right?
I am. Yeah.
So I mean, you're kind of in the same mindset as us. I mean, we like to support local, other small businesses, all that too, and people that we already are associated with. With you, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to focus on Central Indiana. You focus. I mean, you're alum, so let's get your whiskey into where you were made. You know.
Yeah.
And I love that concept, because I think it's lost on a lot of the whiskey brands. Or, you know, a lot of them. I feel like a lot of, and I see this in the cigar industry as well. A lot of people come into this industry going, I'm going to create a business to make money. You lost it at that point.
Yep.
You have to have a passion for what you're doing. And I really feel like we're getting to a world now where you have to also have a passion for the people around you and the local area before you actually try to go big. And I like seeing you doing that. That's really awesome.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think, you know, it creates a core that gives you a good foundation as a business.
Yeah.
And I think local distilleries have done a very good job of that. I mean, you know, for the most part, and that's why, you know, part of what we were doing as an independent bottler, yeah, we have barrels from large distilleries, but we also have partnered with smaller ones, because a lot of them came, you know, a lot of them that we've worked with started in 2010, 2012, 2014, right when the boom was happening, and their local community rallied, and they all of a sudden were like, we can't produce enough. We have not produced enough, because it takes years of foresight. We haven't produced enough to grow outside of our local market.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward 6, 7, 8 years, the you know, their forecasting improved, and they started creating more whiskey. Well, now they're looking to grow into new markets. So that's where we said, hey, look, again, as an independent bottler, you can cast a wide net, and there's an audience of people that, you know, they've got their followers, but it's still, again, kind of looking at that pie we were talking about earlier, very, very, very tiny. My pitch to those guys is, hey, is Indiana on your radar? And if Indiana's on your radar, we've got the audience. We can market to a strong core. Am I going to create an audience for you nationally? Nope. But I can make Indiana pretty easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think, again, that's a marketing strategy of just more concentration, and concentration, it's harder to fizzle out. And
Yeah.
so they did a fantastic job in their local markets. But to your point, a lot of these brands that have come during the boom and as a result of the opportunism of a boom, it's national focus. It's big private equity or venture capitalist money that wants to be marketing first, bourbon whiskey second.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see those brands struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, and with
it's hard to differentiate at that point too.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, with whiskey and bourbon, the problem you have with that is you can't be reactionary. You have to be proactive, because if just like we've been seeing with the finishing game across the industry, you had to be thinking about that 4 or 5 years ago, because you're creating product, now you're finishing it, and it's not something you can just, you know, oh, this is selling well, I can do this tomorrow. No, it has to be thought out ahead of time to really create the products.
Yeah.
It's not a quick game. And then if the boom, you know, starts, you know, shifting, Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got a shit ton of product now. What am I going to do with this? And you just got to hope to sell it. And that's where a lot of companies, I think, miss out.
Well,
I mean, you're seeing even the big six doing some stuff that they claim they would never do.
oh yeah.
They're doing that now because the smaller brands are doing that and they're winning. It's like, okay, are they too late? We'll see.
Innovation will always push forward.
Yep.
I don't know. When you say all that, the thing that jumps to my mind is the Ambarana finishes. And
Please don't do
Literally.
no, trust me. I'm on record as stating I will never.
Oh, I hate
I was not on the leading edge of it. I mean, so you knew, you'd already seen it. I think Starlight was one of the first.
Yeah.
Then you just started seeing brands cranking them out. And,
Yep.
and I'm like, no, I'm not going to be another Me Too with, something that also I just personally don't care for that
I don't
much.
either.
And then,
Tastes fucking disgusting.
It does.
and yeah, and even the ones that are lighter on it that have done well, I'm just like, am I just going to keep chasing fads? And,
Right.
And with $1,000 finishing barrels, like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
No, thanks. And so, I just, I think we're seeing the finishing side of things waning. It's
It
coming,
is.
it's coming down some. And part of that, I think, I this is just my theory, but I think there's some data to support it. It boomed right towards, maybe right before, but really towards the beginning of COVID is when it really took off. Well, guess what? That was also when the most people entered the hobby.
Right.
And it's approachable. It's, it's generally an easy way to get into bourbon. A lot of it's bourbon that doesn't taste like bourbon. And so it's an easy entry for folks. Well, now that has all passed. People aren't drinking out of their coffee mugs on Zoom calls at 11 a.m. anymore. And so
Speak for yourself.
not as much.
Don't.
A lot of folks that got into the hobby. A lot of the folks that got into the hobby
Gotta remember
because
which one it is.
they needed a
Don't
new
think you
at-home
understand how much I
hobby,
do. Sorry.
Yeah, I had to find it.
Yeah.
a lot of people had a new at-home hobby, and
Yeah.
people were back to the office, and you just couldn't expect that everybody was going to stick with it.
Yeah.
So now we've got less new entrants to the market, and less and those that have stuck with it, they're evolving.
Right.
They want,
Yes.
it's no different. I mean, when I started getting serious about bourbon, I was drinking highballs and putting less and less ginger ale every time, basically. And they're doing the same thing, except they're starting with finished bourbon, and now they're working more towards tried and true bourbon, and whiskey. And so, it's just making that market, and there's just too much competition in it.
Well, I think one of the very, very early finishers that I always loved their product was High West.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the port finished rye, that was like, they did that,
I love
15 years ago?
Midwinter Night's Dram has been around for quite a
Very
while,
long
like 10
time.
years
Yeah,
now. And
Yeah. And it's
wish it was half the
spectacular.
price that it used to be.
Angel's Envy.
Yeah.
Angel's Envy was one of the first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Smaller.
Yeah.
And those
They made
guys-
their name on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. Everybody else kind of got on board. Now I wonder, in some cases, it seems kind of twofold. The marketplace kind of folding up underneath it, right? Not being as big of a market anymore. But when we've talked to some of these companies that do finishing, those barrels, they're freaking expensive.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you're paying like a lease price, like you're like, okay, I'll borrow that for $500 for the next year, and then I got to ship it back.
Yeah.
Like that's weird. Like when I heard that for the first time, I thought, a lease on a barrel?
That is weird.
Yeah.
I've not been presented with that yet, but I've
I can't
watched.
remember who
them
was
go
it we
through-
talked to that did Backbone have one that they did on lease? There was somebody that they did.
Or was that
some
Alan
sort of,
Bishop?
maybe it was
I
Alan.
think it was Alan talking about some
Yeah.
of those Armagnac.
I was going to
cognac
say
barrels or something.
Armagnac
Yes.
makes sense because
Yeah.
Yes.
Or Starlight, one of those two.
So I talked to the folks at Lion Cantata, which is my favorite Armagnac company, and I was at an event, and they said, well, we could probably ship you some staves from some barrels that finally went, but like they have barrels that are 200 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They repair them, like they continue to use them with subsequent, fills and they, I mean, literally 200 years.
Yeah.
They're not giving that up.
No.
And
You're
there's
talking,
character to those.
you're talking
barrels.
30, 40 grand just to get that bottle or that barrel. A lot of cases.
Right.
Some of those barrels it's a big investment. I mean, you wonder why the bottle price goes up so much. That's why.
The other thing that scared me with Armagnac barrels is Armagnac varies so widely as a spirit that I've had Armagnac finishes that I really like, and I've had Armagnac finishes that I'm like, well, that's totally different, and not for me. So to not have, at least if you're getting a PX sherry or a ruby port, you know what you're getting. With
Right.
Armagnac, you really don't know. I mean, if you're that in tune, you know the specific domain that it's coming from, maybe, but a lot of that is very variable.
Well, yeah, we blinded an Armagnac finish. We blinded, it was a Starlight Armagnac finish with the Bardstown Bourbon.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, the Chateau de La Bonne.
Yeah.
LeBeau.
And I mean, they couldn't have been any further apart. Like they were
Right.
totally different. So it was just like at that point, hey, which one you like better? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Preference.
there's not a whole lot of. You're not gonna. It's hard to know what you're getting unless you know the source really, really well. And I don't know. Maybe I just didn't get into it early enough to on the business side of things to have that kind of relationship. But
Mhm.
I don't know that most do. So
Yeah.
So my glass is empty.
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
should
What do
we
you
do?
guys think of the bonded?
It's
I always love it. Great soft caramel
you.
notes. Not heavy on fruit.
Check all the boxes.
It
Really,
does,
Checks
yeah.
all the boxes.
I'll ask this question real quick before we go on, and if you want us to cut this, we'll cut it. But do you? I know you're pretty open on where you get these barrels from.
Yeah.
Where are you getting your bottle and bond from? Or
Bottled. It's right on the label. It's MGP.
okay,
right
I
on the
thought
front
it
label.
did. I thought it said
Yeah, it's
Ian on there.
MGP.
Yeah.
So and something to kind of touch on, like I said, this is 6 years old.
Yeah.
People ask me kind of with this, we've talked about the state of the industry, so to speak, and what that means for a company. I love it. Barrel availability is better than it's ever been. Pricing is getting better. And that's allowed us to increase our age statement. So now we're, instead of a 4-year, we've got a 6-year-old bottled and bond,
Yeah.
and we didn't change the price at all.
Right.
So
perfect.
I don't plan on dropping my prices per se.
Mhm.
I plan on bringing better and better products
Your
without.
prices are in a good point right now. I mean, I don't think you have to worry about that too much.
I appreciate it, but
At least
and I
what's
think,
in the
but I
industry
think
now.
increasing the age statements and improving the products within the same price,
Yeah.
to me, that's the future for us anyway.
Well, apparently you can get 1958 Jim Beam for free.
That's what I hear. I'm gonna
If you
need,
know a guy.
I'm gonna need about 200 bottles of that to pour into a barrel.
Right.
not that
Hey, that'd be
much.
great.
So, Drew, what should we go with next? What are you thinking?
I'd say probably the toasted.
Toast.
Yeah, let's stick with bourbon, and we'll stay on the same curve with proof increasing.
So I will say while you're getting that
Actually,
ready,
That's a cast strength one.
Okay.
So let's go double oaked.
All right. Let's go double it. Okay.
so while you're getting that poured, back to the fuel real quick, do want to call out, they just finished up their,
Sweet.
I forget, what was it, 15, 16 games on the road to start the season because the home wasn't open, and they ended one game over 500.
Two.
I think it was one. Because I think
No, because if they lost last night,
split-
they would have been 500. So now they're up 2.
Right. How is that up to? No. They were. Yo, you're right.
Yeah. They
I
beat.
don't know.
They're 2
I'm
games
mathing
above.
Either way,
like
that's a
right now.
We're mathing like we have whiskey in our system.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the Mike Bother effect.
Yeah.
He ruins your math skills. But yeah, they did sweep Utah. That was awesome.
Yes, they did.
Congrats.
That is a
Thank you.
strong opening, completely on the road, though. To be
Oh,
2 games
brutal.
over.
Dude.
I mean, if you have a winning record on the road, and then you would hope that you're gonna do even better at home.
Well, they had the open house on Monday, and a bunch of us were there. And they left Tuesday to go to Utah. And it really seems like seeing 2,000 people, their new, home, probably got them a bit energized.
Oh man.
I mean, they scored as many goals on this road trip as they had pretty much in all the
whole
previous
season.
games combined.
Yeah.
So they got a net this year. Is Weeks still there?
No,
No.
Weeks got moved up.
And I will tell you right
And
now,
that's the hard part because he deserved to be moved up. 'cause
He did.
he did.
He
He
was
did,
awesome.
but the
That's
new
my-
guy,
That's my nerve. That's what I'm nervous about right now. Goudreau is playing amazing, and I
Yeah.
can see him moving.
21 years old, and he's getting called
And-
out on NHL's
shit.
radio program on XM saying, keep an eye on this guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then he Verbatic, right?
Mhm.
Dang, I finally got it right.
Nice job.
He played great last night. Played fantastic first game he's played, and we got two great goalies.
Yeah.
And that's really odd to say it at the ECHL level. You have two great goalies that come in and play. Their second half of the season should be good.
Yeah. And last night's game, we're
Oh.
watching.
Man, they got
Colin gets into a fight, and the ref just decides, you guys are not fighting. And it was weird because they were going
they were going
pound
hard
for pound, and the refs just clinging on both of them.
Colin Stone punches over the top of the ref.
Right.
It was
Good job
great.
not hitting the ref. And then we get to the last 2.5 minutes of the game, and a brawl
Oh,
breaks out, and Chris Cameron comes off the bench. I mean, play was stopped. So when you come off the bench, it likely means a suspension.
yes, and
Eight penalties in the last 3 minutes.
It was all in one brawl. 8 penalties.
bad thing is, it looks like unless something happens, Cameron might be out for the first game because he's got this. But he did. He came out and he protected his guy, and that's what you do
You
as a
gotta do it.
captain.
Yeah.
He
you
came
gotta
out
do it.
and I mean, honestly, it was everything except for leaving the ice as a Superman punch. He came in on.
Wow.
I mean, he just came hard on him, and I'm like, good job, man. Captain protected his players, and that's what you do as a captain.
Yeah, because it was a dirty hit
was
after the
very
whistle
dirty.
on Llewellyn. The guy from Utah just smashed him into the boards, and
Twice.
he was down. I mean, he was down for a solid minute, trying to recover and get back up. And yeah, Cameron just leaps over the top and comes and smashes that guy in the face like he deserved.
Yeah,
You got to protect your guys. So
yeah, we gotta
Good-
get those boys back out here.
good
on the
run for the
podcast.
Fuel, and it's gonna be a good opening weekend come
Can't
Friday.
wait. Can't
Yeah.
wait.
So tell us about this double oaked. What do we got going on here?
So the double oaked is a 78, 10, 12 mash bill, 6.5 years old, from one of the legacy distilleries, if you will, heritage distilleries, an undisclosed Kentucky distillery. But if you use your Googles and Google the mash bill, you can figure it out.
Oh,
And
It's
we
heavenly.
put it into
it is very heavenly.
we put it into a secondary oak barrel. So I make the distinction between finishing and secondary oaking, and we focus a lot on secondary oaking. And that's, your toasted barrels, that's your double oak barrels, something that didn't house another spirit before, where you're not trying to impart the flavor of another spirit, you're trying to impart more complexity from barrel. The barrels are actually 59-gallon barrels that are coopered for wineries.
Oh,
Winery barrels are they're much more strict about their stave selection. They have tighter grain structure. If you see the barrels, they're beautiful. And I mean, their throwaway staves are what get used for bourbon barrels. And these are from a cooperage out of Missouri. I won't pretend to be some sort of like savant when it comes to that. I just got lucky. We could not get barrels. We have a relationship with Kelvin. We had exhausted our barrels for the year from them. ISC and Speyside, the other two big ones in the industry, weren't taking new customers because of the boom. They were having a hard time just keeping up with their own, because forecasting for laying down bourbon is one thing. Forecasting for planting trees is something even
about
talking
proactive.
generations at that point.
yeah.
And so, it was a matter of just late night Googles and found a cooperage that is willing to sell me barrels.
Awesome.
And they were well established, and I got lucky. I love these barrels. I will not buy barrels from anyone else moving forward. These were Char 4, American oak, Missouri oak, and I think they really are the magic of our double oaked and our toasted.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, Will, is that the cooperage that Gary used to work at?
No, he used to work at Independent Stave.
Okay,
Company.
okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if it
Gary,
was the same one.
Gary Heingardner with Woodhat.
Okay.
Spirits out of
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the same.
I can't remember the
Missouri.
Missouri,
yeah, I'm just trying to remember the city or the town. I can't remember.
about halfway between St. Louis and Columbia.
Columbia, yeah.
Yeah.
New Florence or Florence.
Something like that, yeah.
I just want to say, like in the second third of this cigar,
Huh.
I didn't know if the crema would hold up with a double oaked, but it really
doing
does. Like it really pairs well with it.
It really
honestly,
does.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
this
love
is this is an approachable cigar for everybody because it's not going to be strong. You don't have a really bomb of nicotine, but you have flavor.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some Connecticut's tend to come across as just bland.
Yeah.
This one actually has a lot of good flavor because it's a lot of Nicaraguan tobacco still in here. So really nice.
Yeah, I love this cigar with coffee in the morning, but I'm telling
Yeah.
you, man, with the double oaked, it's
I can't believe we haven't done this one on the podcast before.
I know. Well, we talked about it.
We
last few
talked
times.
about it a lot.
We even talked about doing a coffee podcast with this.
Thank you to sponsor Deadwood Live. Derek with Deadwood Live is producing top quality live edge products as well as bourbon themed furniture. If you've been in the lounge, you've seen the custom live edge table and barrel stools produced by Derek. Be sure to give him a like and follow on Facebook at Deadwood Live. That's DED Wood Live.
Which this goes great with coffee, by the way. But we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
so.
Now we're doing it.
I want to circle back to your like early days starting in this whole industry with creating the Indiana Brown Water enthusiast group. Like, what spurred you to create that group, and talk about kind of how you formed it and
Well, I didn't create IBWE.
oh, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I created another group that shall not be named. Much smaller group, and the whole premise was we wanted to do like razzles, and we wanted keep it all local. Because I always joked like with national groups with razzles, even though everything was at correct valuations, the shipping cost was basically like the VIG. It was like the house fee, on a bet. And so if we could eliminate that, that's better for everybody. It also gets people to get together, gets people to meet up and stuff like that. And so went really well. And again, I was all about barrel picks. And so I did a few barrel picks with that group. First pick we did was we did 4 barrels of Russell's Reserve. That was back in the day when you go down there and you're like, I know we talked about doing 2. Could we do 3? And Bruce Russell, Eddie's son, looks at us and he's like, "Y'all want 8?" Like, I mean,
Yeah.
try as many as
Different
you want. You can
world.
take as many as you want.
Yeah.
I'll tell you if something's off limits. And
Now they're trying to find a way to sell you a quarter barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, we bought 4 that day, and then fast forward the next year, the store that we worked with, Rural End, was like, the owner was like, "Hey, we get 4 barrels again, but we only get 4 barrels. Happy to split them with the group, but we need some for the store as well."
Sure.
Fast forward another year, he's like, "I get 2 barrels, only 2 barrels. I'll take care of you personally, but like, can't give the group barrels anymore." Fast forward, I think he got 2 for 2 years, and then he got 1, and now it's at the point where it's like, "Yeah, hey, Eddie picked a barrel. If you want it, you can have it. We don't have time for you to come down." But that I would say that's kind of a microcosm of where the industry went.
Right.
And so anyhow, I had a little falling out with that group. Didn't necessarily like the direction it was going. Personally, it wasn't what I envisioned, and that's fine. They, let them do their own thing. IBWE was Indiana Bourbon and Whiskey Enthusiasts at the time, and it was kind of the Wild West of local groups. There were no rules. The guy that was running it's a great guy, but he was kind of just very hands off. I said, "Hey man, you want some help? Like, you've got something cool. You got a couple thousand members here, but some of them aren't real people. Some of them look like they're trying to scam people. Like, maybe we step in and do some rules." He's like, "Yeah, please." So me and a couple other guys jumped in, and selfishly I looked at it, or I don't know if it's selfish, but strategically I looked at it and said, "Okay, this is a group of a couple thousand members. That could appeal to local stores to partner with us, because now we have an audience that it makes sense. That's good marketing for them." And it did. We quickly got shut down by Facebook, and reinvented the group as Indiana Brown Water Enthusiasts. And we went on to do, I think we picked about 50 barrels, 40, 50 barrels
Nice.
for the group in
Wow.
about 5 years. And it was, and then at that point I was approached by, somebody who had a bunch of barrels and had the ability to run things through a liquor store, that he was involved with. And, he said, "Hey, you've got this large group, you got this following, like we should create a brand around it. And, I'll give you a royalty." I think I made $1 a bottle, but it was no liability. I didn't have to provide the barrels. We used his designer. First thing he sends me over is this label for Indiana Brown Water Enthusiasts. It's got my face on it, like I'm like happy or something. And I'm like, well, that's about the most narcissistic thing.
Yeah, who the hell does that? Face on everything.
Yeah.
I mean, final
you.
third podcast
Fuck you.
shirts with all 4 of our faces on them, not for sale. That's right.
So, I said, all right, well,
Oh wait,
I want to look.
my picture's on the back of this.
Yeah.
I didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. So I was like, all right, we can roll with that, but like, can we at least include all the other guys that help run the group?
Yeah.
And then we did a charity competition, where whoever raised the most money for this charity got their face on the bottle. And there's a gal named Monica Tran, and she won the competition. So we did a small batch. It was 6 barrels. We proofed it to 105, and it had all 6 faces, the 5 guys that run it, plus Monica. And naturally Monica's was the most popular, sought out one. And then we did it again, but with single barrels, and we did another competition for Indy Humane. And we let people get their dogs on the bottles.
Yeah.
And so that was the first run of dog bottles, and that was kind of spurred because I had lost my German Shepherd right before that, and I wanted to commemorate her. And so both went really well. I mean, with the small batch, we outsold Tito's in Big Red for 3 days.
Damn.
And that's their number 1 selling spirit. We were only in 16 of their, at the time, I think 50 stores, and we still outsold them for 3 days.
That's awesome.
And it was like,
That's incredible.
okay, we've got something here.
Mhm.
And to me, I look at it as I thank that person all the time, like, and even offered, hey, like, I'm gonna roll with this. I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna rebrand it. I'm gonna put my own money in. I don't want to, if you want involved, I'll give you some equity. He was unable, given his current status, to do that, but was still to this day is very supportive. And so at that point, because I'd had the good fortune to be able to peek behind the curtain and learn the industry, for no cost and no risk, great learning experience. And at that point it was, okay, let's rebrand this, because the branding here is so limiting. And so that's when we created Circle City. And that's when I, bought my own barrels, and that kind of, the rest is history.
Which, kudos to you having that name available, because why would you not want Circle City Whiskey Company to be a brand of whiskey in Central Indiana? I'm like, come on, man.
You've done
You did a great
you've
job
done
of
a lot
marketing.
of smart things, but I have to say, of all your smart things, that may be this branding is
Yep.
it just screams Indianapolis, Indiana. It just makes total sense.
Well, yeah, because now, like, you see the torch on the flag or whatever,
Indiana's
and it's
torch.
just the Indiana torch or whatever. I see
Yep.
it on a flag just driving by. I'm like, that's Circle City,
Yeah.
but it's not the whiskey. It's just the flag. But like, that's
Yes.
what makes me
Indiana flag. Yep.
because I'm not from here. But I think that it's first.
I appreciated that. I mean, that was the goal, is we wanted it to be on a shelf, and people like, oh, especially if they're coming from out of town,
Mhm.
It's
a local
or
brand.
bartenders say, what's a great local whiskey I should try? Well, you can't get any more local than this. But also the other thing is, it's funny because you get outside of Indianapolis, you get to like even as close as Cincinnati, and they don't know that Circle City
They don't know
is
what it means.
Indianapolis.
Huh.
Yeah.
So I also think that it's not limiting us from going into new markets. It's not too local.
Yeah.
If we called it Indianapolis Whiskey Company,
Right.
I think that would be a little limiting.
No, I
I agree with you.
I agree. And I mean, look, you were on. I don't know how many you've done on releases you've done on Sealbox, but you've done 1 or 2. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first release you did on Sealbox
I mean,
sold out in
in,
minutes.
what, an hour or two?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty
Most of them did. There are a few lingering of one of them, but yeah, everything was sold out in about 18 hours.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's
and then we've done another one that did well, but I think they still have a few of the toasted on there, which
Okay.
is, I think my friend that works for them said, he really tried to push and was like beeping out the distillery name, like if you've ever wanted to try this, and it's funny, he comes back and he's like, I thought people would catch on to what it was a little better than they have.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of a huge consumer base, is not everybody is completely in tune with mash bills.
Yeah, yeah.
and to everybody that doesn't know, Sealbox is basically an
Online store.
retailer.
Yeah.
That can
Well-
sell nationwide. Well, not nationwide, but they sell to most states.
States that actually allow it. That's a good lead into this. You'd mentioned you're opening up an online store here coming up soon. Right now you can't ship into Indiana. How does that work with you shipping out of Indiana to other states? It didn't matter as long as it's a state that accepts shipping, right?
Correct. It's all those are all run, all the online shops with a few exceptions, but the majority of them are run through Washington D.C.
Okay.
DC is very much a wild west of liquor. Like, their laws are much more open.
They're
They
Wild
have
West
online
period.
retail permits. And you say you can't ship into Indiana, but they ship into Indiana.
Yeah.
They ship to all but 4 states.
Okay.
So and the weird thing is, we've worked with a few different online retailers, and of almost all of them, there's 4 states we can't ship to, but they're not always the same 4 states. So it's really weird. But
So what is that? What is the law right now? I mean, I thought they opened it up to ship to Indiana like a year ago, and then all of a sudden I go on Old Forester when they release all their shit. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't ship to Indiana. I'm like,
part of it is where they're shipping from, and I don't, frankly,
you don't know
to
the
your
rules on
point,
that.
it's what are the rules to that? I don't, to your
Honestly,
point,
even
it's
the
so
ATC doesn't even know the
convoluted.
rules.
It's
Yeah.
so convoluted, nobody really knows, and I think that's where the confusion comes in, and why it's different states every time.
Yeah, it's one of the hundreds of laws that are on the books that
No one
just
knows.
don't get prosecuted
Yeah, and then
because they don't even know. I mean,
With
that's like what you.
Commonwealth,
it's like-
they're the same way. They went through DC.
There's
Like Prav Saraf owns West DuPont Wines. They went through him. So it's
there's
West.
also so much disparity between, and one of the things we're pushing for our state distillers guild is creating a little more parity when it comes to what wineries versus breweries versus distilleries are able to do.
Yeah.
Wineries can ship,
Yeah.
even if it's just
Anywhere.
We're even
Anything.
saying, even if it's just in state, even if you just allow us to ship directly from us to in-state customers. That I get people all the time like, hey, where can I get, I'm up in Northwest Indiana. I don't know where a local store is. If I could just give them a link and they could just order directly from us.
Drizzly.
Yeah. That's gone now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
it got
so-
bought.
Yeah.
It got
Yeah,
bought.
they were
Uber
shut-
Eats, I
killed.
think, bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like these companies that deliver. I mean, we get packages of tobacco from UPS. Guess what? We have to sign because it has to go to a 21 and over person.
Yeah.
They all know how to do this. It should not be a problem.
Right.
Correct. And then
Well-
there's things, I mean, again, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble with legislators, and that's fine. I don't want to target on my back. I know they mean well.
We only have 14 of them to listen to us,
Okay.
legislators.
Hopefully, they're
No, I'm
friendly.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Hopefully it's the friendly ones.
They are.
So, they want to, farmers markets are a big thing right now.
Yep.
They have their own set of rules. If it is a registered farmers market, we are not allowed to hand out samples. None of us are. Distilleries, wineries, breweries, none of us. And, they say, well, it's about responsible public policy and all of this. And it's like, well, look, we're not asking you to change the rules of tastings.
Right.
We know we're only allowed to give 2.4 ounce samples for a tasting. We have to check ID. We have to do safe serve classes. Like, we're responsible adults.
Right.
The customers are as well, or they're expected to be.
Right.
We'll both
License.
do our part. Why are we not being why is there no trust here?
And it's a different
Right.
audience. No one's going to get liquored up at the farmer's market
No.
at 8 a.m.
Right.
downtown Fishers.
Speak for yourself.
They wouldn't,
I'm in.
and they wouldn't mind trying something though, and it's a good opportunity, just a little sample, and
We see ash and elm there,
Yeah.
but they don't hand out samples. They're not supposed to be anyway.
They're not supposed to.
So
I don't remember.
Of course they
I
don't.
never got one, Drew.
well, the Fisher's Farmers Market, they hand out. There's a guy there that has a blend, the premixed cocktail shit, and like he'll hand out samples of the cocktail without
alcohol.
Yeah, you just add it to your whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like the Otter or whatever.
Bring your own flask.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But I mean, they like the events, like the big red one that's coming up at the fairgrounds or whatever. Like that's not considered a farmer's market; it's a tasting event.
Correct.
Right.
There's different things in that too, and like it's the same thing with food tasting. Doing samples of like jerky and sauces.
Which we don't need to promote that event, but a few of us will be there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to come hang out with
It's always a fun time.
I won't personally be there. I accidentally bought tickets for my wife and kid to go to Taylor Swift concert in Vancouver.
Ugh.
accidentally.
How do you accidentally? You need to tell that story.
So it was Sunday morning when she was in town, and my wife and my youngest are huge Swifties. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to become father of the year and husband of the year all at once. I'm going to buy a ton of wife credit. And
Good on you, buddy.
I'm going to get them tickets for tonight. I'm going back and forth between StubHub, Vivid Seats. StubHub seemed like the better
for when she was
opportunity.
here. For when she was here.
Yeah.
Somehow when I went back to StubHub,
Oh.
I see this, 400 level seat. Oh, that's not a bad deal. And I'm like, I show my wife, she's all excited, click the button, get ready for December 8th. And I'm like, wait, what? All stuff.
She's not here December.
StubHub's like, no takesies, backsies. Like, you can relist them, but there's extremely high fees on those.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, I probably could have got my money back because it is the last show on her entire Eras
Yeah,
tour.
ever.
So there's gonna be a lot of FOMO around that. I just said screw it, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I looked at and flying. I mean, because she's in Vancouver, hotels and flights into Vancouver were crazy.
Oh, I'm
I'm
sure.
like, what about Seattle? So I looked at Seattle. So we're gonna fly into Seattle, spend a couple days there, and then drive up and then fly out the next day. So
Still works. Just
It's
wasn't the same
Good
day.
for you, man. That's
Yeah,
a hell of a,
yeah.
that's a hell of a gift.
Trust me, it's something we'll never forget.
No, man. That's
How
awesome.
expensive are Taylor Swift tickets? They're so expensive that if you accidentally buy them in the wrong venue, it's still cheaper to fly to wherever you're going.
Yes, it is.
The other part of the country.
Oh yeah. I have a buddy of mine here in Pendleton that he took his family to Edinburgh.
It was cheaper.
Scotland.
It was cheaper to go to a lot of the European shows.
Yeah.
Then
And that one,
with
like,
flights and everything, it was cheaper.
it measured on the Richter scale, like from like 7 miles away because the crowd.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, it was bonkers.
That's nuts.
Yeah. He said it was absolutely insane. They thought the whole stadium was going to come down.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's how it should be.
Yeah. But I'll go to Europe to see Taylor Swift.
I mean, I guess.
I guess.
yeah, I mean, my older son and we're actually going to a jazz club. My son's a musician and loves jazz. He's
Oh,
in
hell
jazz and
yeah.
everything. So there's a jazz club in walking distance from the stadium. So we're just going to
Oh, that's awesome.
at the SkyTrain, tour the city on the SkyTrain all day, and then walk them to the stadium.
Well, I'll tell you who I think got the better end of that deal.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
No,
A
trust me, I
Vancouver
did-
Jazz
you know,
Club?
Clinton
Hell
was
yeah.
the dad that had to pay for all this.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's cool, too. I mean, the two girls are going to enjoy what they love. You're going to enjoy what you love, and your
The
son.
second one's not a girl, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's fine. No, it's
No. I mean,
it's true, but it's already my youngest. It's my youngest son. And
oh, I thought your wife and
no,
daughter.
my
I thought you
youngest
said daughter.
son also.
My bad.
No, you should, trust me, I'm not offended. I joke like at 13, he just turned 13. At 13, he still thinks that if he likes the things the girls like, it's gonna get him in. I'm like, you're gonna get friend zoned, bro.
That's not how that works, brother.
He's got to learn, right? Yeah.
He will.
Yeah.
He will.
So my glass is empty again.
All right.
And maybe now's a good time to do a special presentation while we're getting the glasses filled.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Hey Lisa,
Hey,
can
Lisa.
we get you over here?
Hey, Lisa.
Can we get you? And yesterday we had a drawing.
Yes, we did.
The most of the month of November.
Pretty much
beginning,
the entire month
yeah,
of November.
So at the
Yes.
beginning of November, there was the Aladino cigar event, and had Aladino on special for the entire month. And as part of that, if you bought 5 cigars or more, then you got entered into a drawing, and we drew yesterday. And Josh, you want to join us over here on the couch for a minute?
You can come over here, and then we'll just we can
You can leave that there. It's in the camera. It's in the view.
It's in
Yep.
another view. Yeah.
Yep.
So just come over here and sit.
Yep.
And we'll have that. And Scott can move his mic over so you guys can talk.
If Drew, you want to move yours over there to Josh?
I don't know if it'll get all the way
a
over
little
there.
bit. It'll get close enough. He can get in. So this is Josh Prine. Josh, you've been on the show with us before because we camp out at the 500 together, and we've done some live stuff from
some people even get married
Nashville.
at
Oh yeah,
500. So.
Josh got married at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at Lot 6. Congratulations on that marriage.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Yep.
Yeah, we
And-
had a great time there
And-
and everything. A lot of great people.
Yeah.
You know, kudos to Mike for doing all the pictures and the videos that he did for the wedding. I
Yep,
think
our
we
producer,
really
Mike
enjoyed it.
Bother.
Very
That's awesome.
unexpected.
Both are visuals. Yep, always killing it.
So last night we finalized, because today's December 1st when we're recording this, we finalized the Aladino event. So what we were doing is you buy Aladino cigars, you get chances to win a humidor setup. You're getting a humidor, you're getting some swag from Aladino, glass, some cigars and all that stuff. About a $400 value. And last night we drew the pit ticket and Josh won the prize. So Lisa, you want to
Present this.
I mean, I know it's like
I don't
really
know how you
weird.
do it. Yep.
You can leave it there.
Give him a hat and a glass, and he can.
There you go.
He can have a pour of
You
this.
get the glass, but there's a
You can have your first pour from a Circle City.
yeah.
Circle City. This is special pick right here.
Yeah. So this is an 80 count Toro humidor from Claro. And they actually made these up with the Aladino logo on them. Really great price. And you were just talking before we started that yesterday, I think it was, you were like, I need to get a humidor. And then last night we draw the ticket and you win the humidor. So you don't have to buy a humidor now.
Yeah, exactly.
You also got the Aladino
Oh, that's really nice. Oh, great.
and a lighter. And then the 4-pack of cigars.
All right.
Yeah, and those cigars were actually rolled back more than likely. I mean, they won't confirm anything because they're classified, but it's a blend that was created more than likely by Christian Aroa and Julio back when they still owned Camacho. So we're talking probably 10, 15 years ago, and they've been sitting in the warehouse. I don't think they haven't had enough product to actually sell a
What's that,
complete
Lomos?
line.
Yeah.
So they actually have them for events only. So there's some cigars there too.
Oh, great.
So congratulations, buddy.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Gee. So that was awesome. Yeah. And then last night we also gave away the fuel
From the open house.
From
Yep.
the open
If you
house.
signed up at the open house.
and Cody Dunn. Cody Dunn won that. So if you're listening to this, Cody, we've already reached out to you
out of Greenfield, I think.
out of Greenfield. Yeah. So we're excited to have them. Have both of those two humidors given away. And that humidor was the same humidor, except for it was logoed up with the Final Third logo on it. So
So you
congratulations
could look
to
at
our
Rob's
winners.
face. His pretentious face
Yeah.
every single
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's a story behind that. Damn it. So congratulations, buddy.
Well, thank you,
Appreciate you,
guys.
man. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Glad to see you got that. And now you have to fill it up. So
Go buy
A
2
couple
boxes,
boxes.
Josh.
yeah, 2 boxes to fill that thing half up. So
Yeah, I
Heck
think
yeah.
what I've got at home probably will fill it. About
Good.
halfway, or probably.
There you go.
good deal.
There
Good
you
deal.
go.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
congratulations, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks
Well,
for
here-
joining us.
Hey,
Yeah, thank
you're welcome to hang out with us here, but
All right.
yeah, please sit and join us, and we'll
But
just
Drew's going to take the,
Yeah,
the
we'll
microphone
take-
back
Drew will
because
take
he's
the
got
mic
more to
back
talk
and-
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
we
you
got some more going here.
share, drink with us, have a
Oh,
smoke.
Grab your
Yeah,
cigar.
grab your
Yeah.
cigar.
Okay, so we got the rural in pick here. Is that what we're drinking next?
One of the
Which-
rural in pick.
which-
One of
One of
they
them.
did
Yeah.
2.
Okay.
Rural's been a rural in.
Is that what you have there?
Yes,
Sorry
that's
if
this
this is
one
against
right
the
here.
rules, but I always got to give them a shout out. They've done 11 barrels from
Yeah.
us.
We love those.
Shout
guys.
out,
They're great.
We love Ray. Ray's a great guy.
A handful of other things they've brought in. They've been a great partner for us. And for those that don't know, I mean, Ray's been doing the whole whiskey and bourbon thing since before it was cool. doing barrel picks before it was a thing, really, and
yeah.
so they've got quite the cult following nationally. They've got a national awareness, and to do what they've done where they do it,
Yeah.
is a testament to what they're
Absolutely.
offering, and so
Yeah.
That's what we
kudos
call
to
a rough neck of the woods there.
Well, and
yeah, we don't. I always tell people, if you're coming in town and you're a bourbon guy, go there during daylight hours.
yes.
And then I say that about 3 more times during
Yeah.
daylight hours.
What is it? Just north of 10th Street on Rural.
Rural. Yeah.
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 The nice thing
Rural
about it is,
Michigan,
though,
yeah.
you can, I mean, you're 5 minutes away from the garage in some areas that have great food.
Mhm.
There's a lot of great stuff in there. So you're not that far away from safety.
No,
but,
there's
you know,
even some great restaurants right in that
There's a
neighborhood.
lot of
There
good stuff
is,
there.
yeah.
Yes.
Mexican restaurant just down on New York right there that we go to a lot when I'm down in that neck of the woods, and yeah.
And to be honest, like the locals that, frequent that area, that it's a lower income area, but everyone kind of understands.
They
You
do.
don't screw with customers going in there.
Yep.
They're fairly nicely respectful, and
Yes.
they don't really bother you. You don't.
You're not getting the issues by
No.
going in there. You're getting the issues are all outside somewhere else that might happen during,
But
but you're not, it's not a problem.
we've tasted other things from Rural Inn on the podcast, and I'll say it 100 times. Like those guys there on their barrel picks, I don't question it. Although they have all their barrel picks open for you to taste in the store, which is great. I trust those guys' palates. You know what you're going to get from them is solid, and you don't have to worry. And they don't miss on picks usually. I mean,
No.
I haven't had one I didn't like. So
They had a couple Peerless a year or two ago that were
yeah,
Very
spectacular.
good. Yeah.
Those were from like 5 years ago. Actually.
Were they?
Yeah. So those were the first Peerless ryes to come into Indiana. He bought 3 barrels, and they were only 2 years old, but man, they drank. I mean, that was one of my first introductions to sweet mash. And
Yeah.
that's, if we do distill whiskey, it will be sweet mash.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's, and I've learned so much from Ray. He's been good to me as both a customer and now he being a customer of ours. But I mean, he's a guy who's told me forever, 80% of the barrels that I pick are for my palate.
Yeah.
20% are things that I know aren't for me, but I know the other palate will like.
Yeah.
And his son Vince, who I also think the world of, kind of falls into that 20% oftentimes, and so that helps.
Yeah.
But I love that whole idea, and it just kind of speaks to what we talked about earlier, and just differing palates. And he's just got a really good feel for the market and for taking care of his customers, and just can't say enough good things.
yeah. And if bourbon or whiskey's not your thing, he's done some amazing rum picks.
Yes,
he's
he
done
has.
some amazing tequila picks. So
Yeah.
I mean, you've got something for everybody from
Yeah.
a pick standpoint, from a single barrel selection. That's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
So we've talked Big Red and their event coming up. We've obviously talked Roll In and what they do with their picks. I also want to shout out to Sobro. So I went there for the first time maybe a month and a half ago, and they kind of do some coordination with some groups and do some picks and stuff, and I don't know enough about them. But one thing that they did, if you go there and you buy anything every month, you can have your name put into a drawing, and they sell basically MSRP a lot of these difficult, either allocated or just difficult to find bottles. And I'll tell you, that's a pretty cool program. I really respect that. And they do require loyalty. You got to go in there and buy every month to get on the list. But I even got called as first time I'd gone in, and they were like, "Hey, we still got like these 8 bottles left. Do you want any of them?" And they weren't anything I was interested in, but I'm just thinking that's a lot of work. Like if you're having to make that many calls or send that many emails to get this stuff out just for right to buy, I was pretty impressed.
And for those guys, like, I feel like Sobro did it right with craft beer, right? That if you wanted a good like their craft beer selection is great.
Yeah.
If you want to find something West Coast that you can't find, I mean, a small West Coast place, you're probably going to find it there. if they don't have it, maybe they can get it for you. I mean, it's pretty cool. So
Yeah, there's some liquor stores I'm not a huge fan of their locals. I'm not going to call them out, 21st Amendment, but you know they.
well, are they still 21st Amendment?
I don't
Like, haven't they been fractionated off? And,
They've been selling off the stores left and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
It was a failed investment, I think, for the new owners. But yeah, Sobro, and they have a couple picks of ours too. What we're drinking right now, actually, they have a barrel from the same run of barrels that they just got in, and Lou, the owner, and Jake that runs their bourbon program, their whiskey program, are great guys, and we've been partnering with them more and more too. And they've got one of our 12-year rye picks. They're great guys, and you know, they're in a cool location. Being there and right there in the heart of Broad Ripple, South Broad Ripple is it was underserved. You have Cons over there, and I like Man Beer and those guys too. But
Yep.
you know, it was an underserved liquor community, if you will.
very
I don't know what that
unassuming
means.
store. It's like,
yeah,
it's next to
yeah,
a
so-
gas station and some sort of strip mall thing, and you're like, you got to
Yeah.
Google it to kind of
Yep.
find it.
tell us about this barrel, Drew.
Yes,
And,
please.
So this is a rural in pick. So it is 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley from another heritage distillery that we've already talked a little bit about earlier, where I did some of my early picks with groups.
Yeah.
Again, undisclosed, because I don't have an NDA with any of these folks.
Yeah.
I could say it, but I'll let you guys do it. But so there's no, you're not going to get me in trouble by saying it, but at the same time, I'll refrain. But
pairs
it's-
well with Thanksgiving Day
Yeah.
turkey. Yes,
Yeah.
all that's good.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
So, but I will say, with the first, with the one that our double oaked is from, I did talk to their chief legal counsel, and even without an NDA, you need express written consent to use people's trademarks. And they were very, very polite in saying, thank you for reaching out. We sent out a lot of cease and desist letters. People fail to reach out. And please do not use our trademark on any of your bottles. And so, we respect that. And, but yeah, this one of my favorite distilleries, kind of 1A, 1B with another one of the large heritage distilleries, but, in Kentucky, but, I love the folks at this distillery. I love the distillate. When we got these barrels in, they were the ugliest barrels I've ever bought.
I saw them. You showed them to me. They looked like they were on a ship for 20 years and have been beat to hell and back. That like somehow they still held the whiskey.
Yeah, but then the whiskey, I tried. We get them. I mean, literally, you didn't want to touch. You didn't want to rub up against it. Your jeans would be ruined. Like it has that that fungus that grows on rickhouses and turns it black all over these.
If you've
barrels,
driven
coating
through
them.
Kentucky, you
There
see
was
it.
like a powdery mildew on the heads, and I'm like, oh no, what did I just do? Like, and we crack them open. And
You struck gold's what you did.
and yeah, we open them. I'm like, oh my Lord, this is like the closest thing to that dusty version that we talked about earlier. That is just killer. And they're all low proof. They all came in between 102 and 106 proof. Which isn't what's cool these days.
Right.
But it is. I love this.
It's so approachable.
It is, but it's still got the characteristics that you want in a. I mean, they're almost 9 years old, and they finish long. It's just good whiskey. It's not.
It's got a beautiful.
Well, I
nose.
think we've
not gonna
learned
attract the proof hounds, but it is just good whiskey.
we've learned our lesson that you got to go based on the flavor. You can't make wide assumptions. Like we've always said, oh, not fans of wheaters, and then we go out and we have
great
Ben
options
Holiday
that we
soft red wheat, and we get the Larceny barrel proofs, and it's like
the new heaven.
these are
grainy glass weeders.
yeah.
right?
I mean,
it's like
and you go, okay, well there is wheaters that we like. Maybe we just don't like Bernheim, right? like it's
Or,
just
or you know, regular Weller Special Reserve, which again, if you love that, great.
good for
It's
you,
not my
but
palate. It's not my
I
palate.
left
And,
it 10
yeah.
years ago.
Fred Minnick just made it great. I gotta say, so talking about Bernheim, he just did a review on the most recent Bernheim barrel proof that they have, and he said it's like if you picked up a caramel chew that someone had dropped out of their mouth and it hit the dirt and they put it back in the wrapper and you chewed it up. That's what it is. Wow.
That's better.
Okay.
What it takes.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
All right, let's.
From concept to creation, Bother Visuals specializes in bringing your ideas to life. They'll turn ordinary moments into extraordinary stories. Bother Visuals is your one-stop shop for all things visual. Be sure to like and follow on all social media at Bother Visuals. This particular pour, man, the fruit notes on the nose, I just love them. I love them. It just is a very, very nice, and I can't tell you exactly which fruits it'd be. It's not like getting like a fruit cocktail.
Are you
It's
not,
not that
are
sweet.
you not getting any like almost maple?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, this almost reminds me of again, we're degenerates here. This is a morning
Yeah.
whiskey
I
right here.
always pull a nice cherry note. On
Yeah.
Cherry note,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
cherry.
turkey.
Ever since it was said to me, I get it clear as day. But Eric, you guys obviously know Eric Jansen.
Mhm.
Eric was doing a tasting with a group of guys about a week or so ago, and one of them is Chad that runs the program for Rare Character. Chad and I are good friends. We've spent a lot of time sharing samples because we used to work through the same co-packer, and he messages me and he's like, "Man, this barrel is killer." You know, he's like, "It's like an orange dreamsicle in a glass."
Ooh, there you go.
And it is,
Okay. Yep.
and it's there.
It's
And,
there, yeah.
So
That's the thing is like we all got kind of different notes out of it. And that's really cool when it's so complex that you can come up with multiple notes
Yep.
that don't seem like they go together, but they really do in a glass. Yeah.
yeah, I just ordered more of these barrels and supposed to get them in earlier this week. And
Awesome.
yeah, I'm a little salty. I'm supposed to have them on Wednesday. They said they didn't show up. They said they showed up. The carriers are truck. You know, I worked in.
They're not
trucking
great
for a
to work
long
with.
time. They are not fun.
Nope.
No.
How important is it to develop these relationships? And maybe you can, I don't know how much you want to talk about it or not. And if you don't, that's fine. But with your, I mean, do you use one broker? Do you use multiple brokers? How do you, and then your relationship with those? I mean, obviously you've got to build this relationship where you get access to these great barrels.
Yeah. I work with multiple brokers. It's funny because going back to the story I told earlier of how it all started, I knew one broker. And the market was just so tough at the time too. And I knew one broker, and the oldest whiskey I could get were 4-year-old barrels from MGP, and they were pricey, especially by today's standards. And now I work with probably 5 different brokers, and I get menus of barrels. And to your point, I mean, the cool thing is like there's a couple smaller ones that kind of specialize in smaller lots of well-aged stuff. And I've had some really good long conversations with the guys. They get to know that you're a whiskey guy. You're not, you're not just somebody looking to buy 1,000 barrels of something. And so they'll call me with some really cool stuff, and knowing that I'm on that short list of some really pretty awesome stuff. We'll taste one of them, from one in particular were these 12-year-old rye barrels, and it's just cool. And then they're willing to hold things for you. I mean, we're small, so
Yeah.
cash flow's a thing. It's an issue, and it's like you buy a run of 12-year-old rye barrels, and you're kind of at your limit for a little while, but then they'll call you and they're like, "Oh, well, this is available." Okay, let me figure out where I'm gonna find some cash. And the cool thing is those guys then they'll be like, "Well, I got some ways I can get creative to kind of lock these up for you for a week or two. Like,
Yeah.
if you can come up with it within 3 weeks, you're good." And that buys us some time before we lose out on things.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's just all networking and relationship building, making friends.
People
And
buy
that's
from
fun.
people.
Yes,
People
they
buy
do.
from people.
Yeah. Well, and you're opening up a new location here soon. Is that where you're going to be storing all your barrels as well?
Yeah, for now.
So-
I mean, until we outgrow it,
Okay.
I foresee us having to take on an additional warehouse space probably in the next year, which is fine. But just for storage and maybe some overflow for some other projects that we're doing. Yeah, the goal is to get as much of everything into the same place as possible.
Yeah.
That's been challenging because we've worked with co-packers. I still have some barrels down at one in Bloomington. They're awesome, but you know it's cheaper for us to do it ourselves, and so you know we're excited to have more space. We're going from about 600 square feet. Well, we have almost 1,600 square feet right now, but one is not permitted, so it's just dry storage. It's where we can put pallets of bottles and
Yeah.
empty barrels and empty tanks and stuff like that. But that's limiting, and so we're moving into about 3,000 square feet.
Oh, good.
So,
You'll be able to get a lot more
that'll
barrels
be-
to age.
Yeah, and we've got about 160 now.
Okay.
So
That's
and
packed in pretty tight.
It's and we're hitting a point too where I've got stuff that's like, for core products and things like that I can buy a little more of when I get the right deal. But honestly, my big thing in being an independent bottler is like, I only really want to buy 12 to 20 of anything and then move to the next thing, so it's a little more difficult that way. You're not loading up and you're not like, all right, I'm set for the next 3 years. It's constantly staying vigilant and looking for the next great thing. People want variety.
Yeah.
I want variety.
Well, and I think you're hitting the right market now because again, you get the Jim Beam white label and all the different things like that all the time, but they're stuck on creating that exact same profile.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
I don't.
You
want
release new
to.
bottles, and you don't want to because you release those different bottles and everything's different, and people are excited to get them. The whole point is, don't buy my bottle and put it on the shelf and have it as a museum piece. Buy my bottle and drink it and get the next thing.
Well,
And that's the whole goal.
what's the point of buying batch 2 if it's the exact same as batch 1?
Exactly.
I want somebody to buy batch 1, and then when batch 2 comes out, be like, okay, I need that as well. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you made your point was 100% spot on. The old guard, I mean, it was all about recreating the exact same thing, and they pay master tasters or tasting panels a lot of money to blend that, to create that exact same profile over and over. We're literally going the opposite direction, and we're not alone in that. But it's about creating something you want people to want what's next.
Yeah. Yep. And there's something to be said about that consistency too, because again, when you're making cocktails, you want consistency.
Right.
If you're changing it up every time, it changes the cocktail every time. So like we use JTS Brown a lot for our cocktails. It's a great Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond product, 4 years old, and it's great. I want that to be consistent because I want that cocktail to taste the same every time, year after year. That's not what you're doing.
Correct.
So that's great. That's great. All right, we're getting
let's
we
get
we
into
do
the
need
next
a
one over
bottle.
here. So while
So
we're
you say Rise next?
what's
Well, we got
next
the
one?
toasted still,
Mm.
and that toasted barrel, that was the first toasted barrel we ever released as a single barrel, and it is something. So closer.
All right.
There you go.
Grab it, Will.
So that's another example. Rural Inn tasted that barrel. It wasn't a Rural Inn barrel, but they bought half of it.
Okay.
They were like, yeah, how many of those can we get?
Just a skosh.
Yeah.
So I think they bought like.
So is this from
15
one of the two
cases.
distilleries we've talked about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Thank you.
first.
The first one. Okay. Gotcha.
I'm now slowing down on my pours here.
Yeah.
my pours
I
keep
went a
getting
little
less and
heavy
less.
there for a while. I got to work in there in a
We're
little
trying
while.
to be more responsible. So
I'm supposed to go to this caramel.
hell yeah, we're going to the Chris Kindle market
Kindle
after this
market.
today. So
Help me out there.
we're going to get some German food and freeze our asses off outside. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it.
Huh?
But
Toss this.
while we're pouring this, before we keep talking about this, I wanted to talk about the Stoli group and the Kentucky
Yeah.
Owl thing.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Wow,
So,
what the hell?
Yeah,
I'm curious where that's going.
I saw that, the last couple episodes we've been talking about postponing these Kentucky Owl tastings for unknown reasons.
We know the reason
Now
now.
we kind of know the reason.
Chapter 11.
Chapter 11. So I got
Yeah.
the notification yesterday that Stoli Group was filing for
That's-
Chapter 11. So
Yeah.
That's a complete closeout, isn't it? Chapter 11, you're not.
11's the bailout.
Okay,
Okay, 11's the bailout. Okay.
They're restructuring assets, so I don't know if if the brand will go away completely. But I'll be the first to say I don't mind. I don't mind taking pot shots at companies like that. Dixon Dedman and the Carters made something really special. That was one of the first like really special bourbons that I got to try. Was Kentucky Owl Batch 1. A friend of mine owns a bourbon bar just outside of Louisville, and pulled. He's like, "Here, I want you to try this." And I remember just like, "Oh, whoa!" And then he told me the price of it. I was like,
Oh,
Yeah.
Whoa.
but,
Yeah.
but I get it. And they had created something really, really special. And Stoli has completely bastardized it, in my opinion. And I mean, with all the different releases, they were still $100 bottles, but
yeah.
they just didn't do it for me. And I don't think I think the writing's on the wall. It didn't do it for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
you can only ride that hype train till you burn somebody.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people just got burned out on those
$1
releases
bottles.
and-
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you know they had purchased this large lot of land in Bardstown to build this experience place.
Oh,
kinda
yeah.
like what Hard Truth has, and they were going to build these pyramids like their visitor center and their distillery, and they were just going to build it up and make it this big destination place. So I'm curious to see if this restructuring reorg is like nixing that plan, or if they're going to move forward with alternative ownership, or if they're going to sell off their assets. The article that I went through, which I'll post in this link here, they owe a lot of people a lot of money, including Bardstown.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. Yeah, it was a lot. Like, I mean, granted, now when you read it, they owe Bardstown like 50 grand, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't seem like a lot. But then you look at some of the others where they owe hundreds of millions of dollars to these other,
Wow.
like Stoli themselves. Like they've
Yeah.
kind of shit the bed on this one. So
Well,
I'm
that's where
curious.
I feel like, and again, I'm a huge Heaven Hill fan. I love Heaven Hill. I like the fact that they've kept that kind of a family industry, with what they're doing. Now, granted, I don't feel bad. I don't blame some of these big distilleries that have sold out to big conglomerates, because someone comes to you, Drew, and says, "Hey, here's $1 billion." You're going to go, "Thank you very much."
Yeah, generational wealth.
And that's one of those things. Like, I don't blame them for doing it, but I do like to see it stay, because the big conglomerates are not there for the passion; they're there for the money.
Right.
Well,
And it makes a difference. It makes a big difference.
it drives decision making. That's one of the things I love about Wild Turkey is they sold out to Campari
Mm-hmm.
over a decade ago, and but Jimmy,
But they still have total
Jimmy-
control, don't they? Maybe I'm wrong.
some control.
Okay.
So, the first thing these distilleries do is say, okay, your barrel entry proof is going to the max of 125.
Right.
Because then when you proof it down,
You get more bottles.
why would we not want to sell water? I love selling water.
Yeah.
And so, that's what they do. And Jimmy put his foot down, and they originally did barrel proof, or their barrel entry was 107 proof. That's why those old dusty turkeys are at 101 are still so rich in flavor. 'Cause
Yeah.
it didn't take a lot of water to get them down.
Right.
Then they upped it. I think they're either at 114 or 115 now. That was the compromise.
Yeah.
That's still a good compromise compared to where the rest of the industry is at. That's why I still think 101 is a phenomenal pour for what it is.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. But majority of them drive the decision making. They drive, they've driven prices up substantially over the last few, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, like, right now, barrel availability, you've got this intersection right now of private equity and venture capitalists got into. I mean, literally hedge funds were buying new fill contracts because it was one of the most rapidly appreciating commodities that you could possibly get into. Well, now with the market dipping after COVID, they're the first to jump. Like, okay, well, when an investment's dipping, we sell, and we sell before it goes below the line. And then on top of that, companies like MGP and Bardstown, who were reaping the benefits off of that, also were telling their brand customers, okay, well, if you want new fills, you got to commit to a 250 barrel minimum. And then it became, well, you got to do that with a 3-year commitment once a year. You got to do that with a, or it's 2 new fill contracts. It just kept going up and up and up. Well, now you got brands that are overloaded on barrels, and you got investors that are dumping their investments.
Yeah.
So like we're seeing barrel prices just plummeting, which is awesome for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get what we were talking about it the other day. You can find 6-year barrels now for what, like $1,800 a barrel. Like there's some cheap shit out there right now. Like
there's some stuff that's and then you get so that's awesome. The reason I went into this is because you talk about these conglomerates that have driven the prices up so much.
Yeah.
Well, guess what they don't do well? They don't retract well. So all these big companies have increased their pricing substantially with no ability to pivot. And big corporations aren't wanting to do that anyway. And so now for the first time ever, small little guys like myself can compete. Like we can scale and compete with the big guys on pricing, versus specs of products.
Right.
We couldn't do that. I mean, there was always an understood premium on a small local brand. Well, now all of a sudden our products are right in line with theirs.
Yeah.
And so, a big brand just released a toasted product. It's a year older than ours, and it's $15 more than ours. That's right in line.
Yeah.
And so, I get people all the time. They're like, "Are you nervous? Are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, it's better than it's ever been for us."
Yeah.
We're actually in a great spot.
Yeah.
So, it's just interesting to see there's complexity to it that I don't think a lot of people get to see behind the curtain, but, I'm the first person to usually share it and say, "No, this is great."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hitting the big six with, someone said they're slow. You could slowly die a death from 1,000 paper cuts, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Little tiny things, but it's true.
Well, I feel like, even just talking within our, our small circle of friends, there's a lot of people that are out there, and, during the boom, everyone was hunting bottles, and a lot of people were collecting. I mean, they were creating an amazing collection, and nothing wrong with that. That's great. But a lot of people are selling off their collections because they're like, I just want to buy the bottles I'm drinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I have $1,500 bottles at home that I will never drink. Why don't I sell it off to somebody that really wants that, and I'll just keep the stuff I want to drink?
Oh yeah, I had a
And it's
buddy
like-
that he would buy. I mean, he would taste one and be like, "I love that," and he'd buy 5 bottles.
Yeah.
Yep. And he'd have 5 bottles sitting there all right in the line.
It's
And
the evolution of a whiskey drinker.
I'm like, dude,
It
you're,
is,
you're buying
very much
you're
so.
buying a liquor store. Like that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's and what do you think about did the secondary market and maybe a lack of understanding the secondary market cause some of this
God, I hate it.
price rise? Because you see some bottles, and honestly, quite a few of them, they would get released and people go crazy. I mean, we saw Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond. People were, trying to charge 3 times.
Yeah.
4 weeks later, it's everywhere
Yeah.
at $40 a bottle, right? And they're trying to get $200 off of a bottle for a week, right before it all hits the shelf everywhere.
In the Southeast right now, Weller Special Reserve. I mean, if
Oh,
you're in North Carolina or South Carolina and you're trying to buy a bottle of anything Weller, let's just go Weller Special Reserve, $30 bottle.
Right.
I mean,
Should be 18.
it's their $100 bottles. And
Yeah, it should be at the bottom of the shelf at $18 where it was $30 for a half gallon. That's right. Eagle Rare. I'm sorry, but Eagle Rare is a $30 bottle. Blanton's is a $50 bottle. They're just they're great. And I was thinking about that. I forget who I was talking to the other day, and I said, look, that was 10 years ago. That's just what I told people. They were like, hey, this bourbon thing, it's interesting, and I drink Woodford. If I want something I haven't had before, what should I get? And I would always say, like, go get Eagle Rare.
You ask any Kentucky bartender that's worth a damn. I mean, Blanton's was their well pour. Like they would mix cocktails with it. Like it wasn't.
And it's fine for mixing cocktails. I mean, look, I get it's a single barrel, but they weren't picking barrels. They had a spot that they had designated as their honey hole in one or more rick houses. And they said, this particular area makes really good whiskey out of a single barrel. And that's all that they were doing. It wasn't magic. It wasn't people going out and picking barrels the way that they do now, right? They just said that area creates really good single barrel whiskey and we'll sell it as that.
It started as picking barrels. So Elmer T. Lee created Blanton's, and he was picking honey barrels from his honey locations.
Okay.
For
And
Colonel Blanton.
I mean, those early Blantons, late 80s, early 90s,
Admittedly, I've not had
dark
late-
as night.
yeah.
They're just insane. You know, and to your point, you know, Rob, what you were saying about, you know, with the secondary market, with guys like selling off their stuff.
Yeah.
It's no different than what I was saying about these private equity and venture capitalists.
Yep.
It was just investment. It
Yep.
was just on an individual scale.
Yeah.
They started to see it plummeting because people were starting to offload all their stuff.
Sell.
And so naturally, was it that they just wanted to keep what they wanted to drink? Partially. But was it partially also, oh crap, my investment is starting to
Lose value.
lose value. Now's the time to sell.
Yeah.
Sell it as
Yeah.
close to the top as I can get.
Good point.
It's
We talked about this 5 years ago. I mean, I would tell people all the time, I was like, this market's going to get flooded at some point.
Mm.
It's going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of really great whiskey at really reasonable prices. And, you know, it's exciting to see that maybe now we're on the cusp of that. When I start hearing people that I know that have been searching and going to liquor stores every day, you know, searching for bottles, and now they're saying, well, I'm not buying anymore,
Yeah.
Secondary. I mean, I follow the secondary market. Things aren't moving right now.
Yeah.
There's
they're not.
which means prices are going to drop
Yeah, they are.
because people will
Yeah.
get into financial positions where they're going to look at it and go, oh
need to
man,
recoup
I
my-
lost my job. I've been
Yeah.
waiting 6
This
months
is
to
the-
find another
This is
one.
the peak for secondary. Like right now until Christmas is when people are going to buy the higher end because you've got all the releases coming out. So people are going to, if people are going to buy, they're going to buy the higher end stuff now. And it's
Yeah.
just- a lot of it's not moving.
Look, you should be able to go into a nice steakhouse and get a BTAC pour. You should.
Should.
That's something that should exist, right? And
I mean,
yeah,
you can, but you know, most
Yeah.
of them. So like,
well, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg, but it should be expensive because you're, first of all, you're paying a premium because you're at a nice steakhouse.
Right.
But I mean, you walk into
But
to
look at
St.
Orange
Elmo's and they're like, they have it for a month and then it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, really would have liked to have tried that George T. Stagger at a special occasion in March. Sorry, it's
But
March.
twice.
You're not getting it.
on 2 of our trips, Chattanooga, one of them, Orange Beach, the second one. What do we get at? I don't remember the restaurant. We got oysters right after our 2.
Yeah.
Some oyster bar right across from Chattanooga Whiskey.
I think it was
downtown.
Rip. I think we got Rip 10.
We got Rip 10
Yeah.
at a reasonable pour.
Yeah, it's
It's like
$23 or
$24.
something. Yep.
And then we go to Orange Beach, and our first night of dinner there, where we devoured that seafood tower when we took my Lorax picture.
That was awesome.
Um,
That seafood tower is amazing.
I mean, they had all the BTAC line. They had Blanton's Gold. They had, you know, all the fits. They had so much shit. Like, you know, you go places and it's
And reasonable, by the way.
they have the list and it's got the asterisk on it. It's allocated. Their whole list was asterisks. So I was like, there's no way that
They
they're
have
gonna
all
have
these.
any of this shit.
Yeah.
I got a single barrel Taylor pour for $22. I was like, that's great. It's like, that's perfect. It's awesome. And then I realized that they had everything else at what their cost was. And I was like, this is amazing. So like you go to the southern states and like they have
It's a
this shit
unicorn.
readily available.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you can't get that here anymore.
The
No.
problem is, you know, well, so you guys got me thinking about like 12 different things here, but so partially that's a unicorn.
Oh, for
and
sure.
The thing that I love and hate all at the same time, very much a double-edged sword, is all these Facebook groups. Guys will post this stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, I mean, that's really cool that you're sharing the wealth, like, but then it's gone. You just shared it with 1,000 bourbon lovers.
Yeah.
And it's gone by the next
I'm not
day.
posting
Yeah.
shit.
No, it's gone
And
within
then-
10 minutes
Yeah.
because somebody
Yeah.
happened to be in the store.
Well,
and
that's
saw that.
only-
Whether it's a store or a bar, I mean, people just flood. Next thing you know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'll go to that bar and get it. And you see like 17 guys, you know, because everyone saw it. Everyone's like, but then, and then the other side of it is, you know, you mentioned a store that you don't care for. And they were one of the, like, they used to be extremely reasonable.
Yeah.
They used to put stuff on the shelf. retail, it was great. If you know, you got to know, and then it became you got to know the guy. They at least were holding it back, and that's fine. I have no problem with stores.
When they started
savings
putting it in secondary prices, that's when I said I won't even buy a bag of ice from.
And
those
that's
guys.
the thing. Those guys, you know, and what they fail to mention, and they were doing it over secondary on a lot. And it's like, well, yeah, I know you go down to Kentucky and you see this in Louisville stores, and you think, well, why can't I do that? And sure, you can, but we don't have bourbon tourism.
Right.
They thrive on bourbon. When you're down there as a tourist, and some people know, some people don't. I mean, you hear guys that buy Blanton's for $300 a bottle.
Yeah.
People, you know, we all know, we all have friends that are like, oh, Blanton's, that's a $300 bottle. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a $100 bottle.
I got 6 of them. They're yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a $100 bottle at secondary, but you're not on these groups. I understand. And you've been down to the stores, or you got on the internet and saw on Wine Searcher that it was, you know, going some retail stores selling it for $2.99 a bottle. But you know, and that's what the, you know, that tourism market down there thrives on, is the guy that's not on these secondary markets, that is down there on vacation and never gets access to these things, and they're willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these stores that are 2.5 hours north think, well, we're missing out. We need to do that too. And it's like, no, but you're missing an element that we don't have here. But unfortunately, like the one of that chain by me is in an affluent area, and you know, you've got some very wealthy people around there who
will pay for
they
it.
sell it, it gets sold, you know.
And by the way, I don't have a problem with them doing that, but I'm also a consumer, which means I get a choice on whether I'm going to shop there.
Yeah.
And if
Shop
it
with your
pisses me
dollars.
off, then that's it. I said, I'm not going to shop at your store anymore, because look, if you were selling it for double retail, I get it. Like, great, good for you. The market is good enough to sell it at double retail. Do that. So if you're going to sell a Pappy 23 at $1,000, that's great. That's half to a third of secondary, right? And that's okay. You're going to make a little extra money. But when you start just blasting these things out there, I have no patience to shop at your place. Take care of your customers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got somebody that's coming in there and they're stocking their wine cabinet, you know, from your store, and you're able to offer them a bottle that's excellent, I'm actually okay with that. If you're holding back for specific customers, I think that's great.
The people that keep your lights on every month.
Every single business. I'm telling you, the multi-million-dollar contract business that I work in, we do that, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be investing in us and you're going to be consuming our product, we're going to give you a better discount on your overall contract because of that.
Right.
So it's one of those things, you take care of those people. Again, people buy from people. But yeah, I just think this whole secondary market is, if it just completely collapses and people are just stuck with stuff, I mean, I'll feel bad for you, because you know, but then again, you buy some shitty stocks and don't check on a company, and then your investment goes to hell. Same thing. Sorry, that's on you.
It's on you.
Yeah. And I don't think it'll collapse. I think it'll wane, but then
Probably a better way to put it.
and then it'll wax again when it gets too far down, and people are like, oh, if I could get George T. Stagg for $300 a bottle,
I'm going to buy it all day long.
buying them.
Absolutely.
And then it'll creep back up, you know, and it'll find equilibrium. This is just simple supply and demand, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a capitalist, and to your point, Scott, I truly believe, like, I have no problem with retailers bridging the gap.
Yeah.
They were watching hunters and flippers, and I'm not even knocking those guys at all either. If you're going to put in that much work, maybe you should work a little harder in your day job. You probably do really, really well.
Yeah.
Or dip your foot in the water and go get in the business.
Yeah.
You
But at
know?
the same time, if I'm a retail store and I'm watching these guys buy this product for $100 and sell it for $6, I should probably be selling it for at least $3.
I should be getting a little bit out of it.
Yeah, I'd be frustrated too if 80% of the time, and that doesn't mean that you can't take care of your guy for 100.
Right.
Like,
right.
you know, and I know
Well, it
stores that have
doesn't mean
done
you
that.
can't take care of your guy at 300.
Right.
Right. You could still do that.
That's what I love about, I love what Ray does at his right to buy pick. He'll basically give you two prices, right? So as a loyal customer, you spend enough money there, you'll get into a lottery to get right to buy allocated bottles. You either pay one price. He'll take his pocket knife out and literally cut the seal,
Yep.
and you get that price. Or you don't have to cut it, but you're gonna pay a different amount.
Yeah.
Pay a little bit higher if you don't cut that seal, because he's like, hey, if you're gonna turn around and flip this thing, I'm gonna get mine out of it.
Yeah.
He totally should.
Hey, that's
I don't
that's one
blame
thing
him at all. I love that about him.
And I
think
love
it's
that
great.
that where I hear that story quite often, and I've done it myself, where if somebody is kind enough to offer you because you've been a loyal customer, I'm like, let's crack this bitch open.
Right.
Like let's
Yeah.
have a little sample of. Have you tasted it? No, I have. Okay, well, do you want to? Because we could do it right here, right now. I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, it's meant to be drink, and I understand
It
it's
is.
still a commodity, so people are going to buy it and sell it, and that's fine. But man, I don't know. I kind of go back to whatever that documentary was that had the old gentleman that did the tours at Buffalo Trace.
Freddie
Yeah,
Johnson.
yeah, and talks about the
Nicest,
story.
warmest human being.
Yeah, he talks about the story with his dad, and he pulls out what was probably a B-Tech bottle, and he pours one drink and goes to put it away. His dad's like, "What are you doing?" No, we're going to sit here and we're going to drink this. No, it's a really expensive bottle. I know, so let's drink some more.
That's what it was
Yeah.
meant for. Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and that's like, I mean, there are a lot of people that are really good about that. I mean, like we were just talking about Dave Lakes. Dave Lakes is a good friend of all of ours. He comes up, he's like, I got a Russell's 15 bottle. I know you guys love it. You want to crack it open together? I'm like, I don't want to take your amazing bottle, but hell yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
And, we sit there and shared about a quart of that bottle.
And he's like, "Okay, now I got to go. Do you guys want more?"
You guys want more?
And I was like,
And
"Yes."
And I think that's what whiskey's about. Whiskey and cigars both are about creating community and doing things together and sharing with one another. And I think we lost a little bit of that during the bourbon boom. And I think you're right. I think the boom is not going away, but I think it's gonna plateau. It's kind of at a nice balancing point now where people are like, I want to enjoy this stuff. Why am I buying bottles to put on my shelf and hopefully sell down the road? Let's crack it open and share it. And I love that. I think that's what it should be.
And speaking of that, I just gotta say, like, this toasted, dude,
It's a good
you
pour.
nailed,
Really,
you
really
nailed the
good.
finish
It's
on
such a good
this.
pour.
Like, I don't know how many times you probably tasted this, but you nailed it, bro.
I love the spiciness.
Wait, are you saying Drew drinks his own juice?
I mean, he may
come on, man.
taste it occasionally. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got time for probably one more.
Yeah,
so
let's do one more.
get
What's
one
the
more
next
in
one we
us,
should
so
do?
Let's do that 12-year rye batch.
Let's do it.
It's the
Okay.
latest thing I blended together. It's a 3.5 barrel blend of 12-year-old 95.5 rye from NGP.
Okay.
It's 122 proof. You guys see the bottle. It is dark as night.
Dark. Yeah.
And this was another one. I bought these barrels and spent more per barrel than I ever have. Really pushed the cash flow situation on these. And I don't think I'll ever forget the night before. I was actually having trouble sleeping before they came in. I was like,
Thanks, sir.
what if these aren't good? Like,
Yeah.
what if or what if one's empty? What if? And then I cracked one open. I was like, oh, maybe it was just that one. And then I one after the next. I'm like, these are all, and I started proofing them, and they all were high proof, and they all just were just delicious. And I'm like, took a load off, took a lot of weight off my shoulders. But yeah, I mean, that's again, being a small guy, that's what we these are the things that weigh.
Yeah, these are special barrels, and I'll say, like, back in May, we had our annual Club Marzipan first annual anniversary party, and we did it down in Nashville Barrel Company. And Nashville brought out 3 barrels of their oldest rye they had, and they were all 12 years MGP. So I'm like, that was the best of the best barrels that they brought out for our club to pick. Well, at least that's what they said, right? But it just struck a chord with me when you're like, I got 12-year MGP barrel, and I'm like, they're just not around anymore. You don't see them that often. So,
There's a reason why MGP produces so many barrels for other companies. They make great
They make
whiskey.
fantastic.
And
We've been doing it forever.
and I'm so glad we're way beyond the point where people are going, oh, that's just another MGP product. I'm like, No,
some people
it's not.
still do.
Some people still do, but
I laugh
they
at
gotta
those people.
they gotta wake up.
Yeah.
They gotta wake up.
I get it. It's availability, it's exclusivity. MGP is not traditionally very exclusive because it's so plentiful, it's so available in so many different iterations.
But it's getting harder.
But it is, you know, you don't find a lot of this.
No, no.
And I mean, we've got 8.5-year-old MGP bourbon barrels that are. I mean, I've got one that's 7.5 with me, I think. And I do picks, and everybody wants to try. You know, I heard you have barrels from this distillery. Have you heard you have barrels from that distillery?
Yeah.
And I always slide in 1 or 2 barrels of the 8.5-year-old MGP.
Oh yeah.
And they end up winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, and again, I won't name names. Sometimes these groups are like, well, yeah, we definitely like that MGP the best, but we know what'll sell best in our group. And I'm like, I get it. But I'm the
Yeah.
kind of guy that, I mean, I did a 4 Roses barrel for a group a few years ago, and one short barrel on the pick, and it was hands down the best barrel.
Yeah.
And I knew that guys in our group weren't going to be able to get it, and that sucks.
Yeah.
But I would lose sleep, not for a night. I'd still be like struggling if I knew I didn't bring home the best barrel.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, and I think that needs a little more emphasis across the board these days, is like whiskey first. Let great whiskey be its own story.
Yeah. And to that point you were talking about, just, tasting them, just try different things. I'm not going to throw Will under the bus here, but I'm going to throw Will under the bus a little bit.
Easy with that bus shit.
Throw me under the bus.
Will's got a hell of a palate.
Easy there.
He is probably the best palate of all of us. I would
I'd
say.
agree.
And he come in here and did just a basic Kentucky flight.
Oh yeah. Yesterday,
And the Kentucky flight had Woodford, 4 Roses, Buffalo Trace, and Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond. He picked one.
I got one right.
He got one right, and it was
So
4
pissed at
Roses.
myself. Yeah.
And it's like people need to do more of the blinds because
Yeah.
these whiskeys are great. And you're going, no, I'm not a Buffalo Trace fan. It's like, try them all together. Don't think about what you're drinking. Try them blind, and you will be really shocked at how good bourbon really is across the board.
Yeah, it was. I knew I was probably going to get. I was hoping I'd get 2 right, honestly, because I don't taste a lot. These are, and to be fair, these were
the regular
these are the
releases.
flagship ones
Yes.
that I don't drink a ton of. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised you couldn't pick out Buffalo Trace. That's actually one that kind of surprises me that you didn't.
Try them blind,
well,
man. It really
yeah,
throws you off.
no,
How
I'm
often
sure
do
it
you
is.
drink
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace and
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Fish.
think about that flight we did down in southern Kentucky.
Right.
They
right.
did a flight for me. It was blind, and you held on to them, and there was a Jep the Creed at the end. I'm like, I hate Jep the Creed, and there was one. I'm like, that's good. He's like, yeah, that's Jep the Creed. I'm like, I did not guess that.
Your palate
Yeah.
sucks.
My palate sucks.
This rye is just
It's awesome.
Phenomenal.
so
It's
complex.
absolutely-
So good.
Pulling some lemon peel. I'm pulling a little bit of mint.
Man, you said
Yeah.
that like right as I was nosing, and I was immediately thinking the exact same
Yeah,
thing.
It's
It's
just
like, oh, there's a
very
lemon
subtle
note.
mint
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Lemon bar.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's really good. I'd really like to see somebody do a documentary on the MGP story, because we all know like the Seagrams and what was it? The son took over after the dad died, and the company started kind of going south, and then they had to sell out, and MGP takes it. But I'd really love to hear like the details around how they got going way back in the day and the growth of the company. And I mean, Seagrams was, I had an old dusty Seagrams whiskey that was like from 1971, and it was awesome. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. Seagrams has been relegated as a brand name to shitty gin and wine coolers.
There are,
But what a background, right? What a story that would be.
and there's an in between there between Seagrams and MGP,
Is there?
which is LDI.
Oh yeah, that's
Lawrenceburg
right.
Distillers,
Lawrenceburg
Inc.
Distiller. Yeah.
And so there's actually 2 guys that I would love to see partner on and make that, because they've both kind of done their own write-ups on it. Michael Frey, who's local. Mike Frey is with Bourbon Culture, and he does a lot of reviews and everything. And he's my historian that I reached out to. I'm like, with these, I was like, okay, I got the details of which rick house and what floor they're on. What can you tell me? And I tell him the rick house, and he's like, all right, those are concrete floors, but they're also furthest away from the river they're part of the group of rick houses that are furthest away from the river.
Isn't that amazing?
So you can probably expect that they're going to be high proof.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they came in averaging about 128 proof. And he just, I mean, he's got it. He's a historian.
Yeah.
And then another guy who's a little more known, I think, nationally, like on Instagram. If you've ever followed the Cumming Whiskey at Cumming Whiskey on Instagram,
Love that guy.
Yeah.
Jacob Kuiper. Jake's become a really good friend of mine as well. Same deal. Most recently, they've opened up the archives to him basically and gave him access to all the grounds, and he did something very similar. And those guys, I wish they'd put their heads together and maybe work with a videographer.
I was just
Saying,
saying, yeah.
you know where to find me. So
And,
if you want to do that,
Maybe you could be the producer as well as all the other stuff, and then produce it out on your own.
And maybe they
I
do it
totally could do
within a few weeks instead of like
before
a year.
January 5th.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if you were in total control of the entire process, you could probably have something wrapped up in 6 weeks.
Well, I mean, not even that. Just like if that came to fruition, like I would carve time out for that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
I
So-
feel like you could
Contact
actually.
with them, 'cause
you
seriously,
could-
that would be a cool
I was
project.
gonna say
It
because
would
you
be.
do it in conjunction with Circle City, right? Because the amount of MGP product that you've put out there.
Yeah, I
It'd
think
be
us
fun.
and- Us and some others as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you got to include like Smooth Ambler in that, Smoke
Yeah, for
Wagon.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Smoke
Aaron
Wagon.
from Smoke Wagon
That'd be
is a
great one to
wealth of
keep in there.
knowledge as well. He
Yeah.
knows where his barrels, he knows the stories behind them, where they came from. He's very very in tune to what he's working with, and it's impressive. And so,
Well, I,
It sounds
I
like you
think
got
we-
access to the contacts, Mike. You
Yeah.
just have
Yeah,
to decide to invest
yeah,
the time
happy
and
to.
I think we've
trying
all
to do it.
transitioned to the next cigar, which is
Oh,
the
yeah.
601 Green Little Corona.
oh yeah,
This is the perfect pairing with this whiskey.
I agree.
It is
It's
pairing
really good.
so nicely
Mhm.
with this whiskey. That deep, rich, dark flavors from that Oscuro Habano wrapper is going really great with this dark,
lovely.
rich rye. Yeah.
It's lovely.
if we don't talk about the cigar a little bit, Jim gives us shit.
Well,
Yeah.
this 601 Greenie is just amazing.
yeah, it's
It's just
delicious.
a great cigar.
It's a great
Yeah.
stick.
Yeah,
The other thing I'll say about the whiskey too, is I've been a single barrel guy because of my background, because I've been a barrel picking guy, forever, but over the last year or so, I've really started embracing the blending process, and it shouldn't come as a surprise, but I think, again, we talked about it earlier, blending was kind of like, now you're starting to see I don't think it's even hit the peak of its arc even close yet, but you're starting to see blending across categories, like these bourbon
Yeah.
rye, boo rye, if you will. Can't use that. Nobody else can use that label or that
Right.
title except High West. But
Knobs was killer though.
but do what?
Knob Creek, they're
Yeah.
bourbon rye.
These bourbon rye blends are
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is, not that you can't find some amazingly complex single barrels, but it's inherent when you do a blend, you're going to add complexity to the process.
Yeah.
And that's the goal of it, right? Is to be able to take from this and that and make the sum of the parts better than the
look at the
individual
Mattingly
components.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the
I'm
idea
not
of being
gonna
able to
speak
go
to that,
down,
but
well, just the idea that somebody can go down and blend their own and learn that blends,
Process.
it regardless of any
Well,
thought process on just the idea that you
we've
can
had
do
Ari-
it,
We've had Ari Sussman on with Whiskey Gypsy, and
right?
Ari's, I mean, he's a great blend.
you had Ari on here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ari's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's so
He's a wizard.
He started a new concept called Mash Networks, and it is going to change the game for brands like ours. That's actually who our online shop is through.
Nice.
And it was a lost component to the online retail, and I won't knock any online retailer that we've worked with, but there were inherent flaws with each, with just from a process standpoint. And what Ari is doing is eliminating those issues, and basically bringing, and he, I mean, he says it himself very humbly, that he just happened to end up in the right room at a party with a bunch of e-commerce executives who were just blown away by how behind the times e-commerce is in our industry and what he's creating. And what I love and what I think is important to our brand, Nashville Barrel is one that I love those guys. Mike Hines has been so helpful to me. But an understanding for the industry, but also an understanding for the bourbon community. What he's putting together with Match Networks is something that is truly special, and he should be proud of, because it is a very cool concept and will benefit a lot of brands and give them better market access. And that's, better market access without the hurdles of slower delivery, fulfillment times and things like that. Those have always been the issues. Marketplaces versus your own shop, kind of competing at the checkout counter, so to speak, with other brands. He's creating something really, really cool.
That's awesome.
Who was it that we had on that talked about getting graduated cylinders and doing
Ari.
Ari.
It was Ari? Okay, I thought it was
You
Ari.
guys know what he did most recently?
No.
So he partnered with a few guys, and they actually hired divers and dove into Lake Erie or Huron and recovered barrels of lost heritage rye.
Oh, wow.
A rye that's, because of the corporatization of farming, this rye is gone, but they knew that literally tons of bushels were lost from this shipwreck years ago, like decades ago.
Wow.
From like the 30s or 40s, something like that, maybe later, but not, still a very long time ago. And they actually went down and recovered those. And this is going to be a 10-year project. Like, they're literally going to have to regrow it, because I don't think they can utilize what was in the barrels, but they can the seed is still viable. Yeah. And so, talk about just a cool concept and a cool, he's doing something really cool, and I hope it pays off for him.
All right, so I know we are way over time usual.
Oh yeah, we're good. But
this has been awesome, Drew. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think
for having me.
I feel like we could have you on for a whole nother show at some point.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I'm like, are we like inside Indiana business? Because we're hitting business talk, which was great. We're talking about whiskeys. This was awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you guys for having me. There's nothing I like more than drinking whiskey, smoking cigars, and talking about each of them. So.
Well, if you haven't had the Circle City, make sure that you try it. Get out. It's in plenty of stores. You can find it everywhere. You can find it at the Final Third Cigar and Whiskey Lounge, of course. And Drew, tell us, where can they find you on social media?
So for Instagram, it's at Circle City Whiskey Co. Facebook, it is Circle City Whiskey Company is our page. And we do have a TikTok, but I don't manage it. Victor does, and we do some fun things on there, but I can't really speak to it as much because I'm too old for TikTok.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, you can find me at Scotty D Smokes.
You can find me at Cocky Wolverine on Instagram.
Heck yeah, you can find me at Both the Visuals, Spencer Lee's, and don't forget to follow the Final Third podcast, Rob.
Yeah, everywhere on just Final Third Cigar. So thank you everybody for coming for listening on.
Congratulations to
Drew,
Josh Pride.
Josh, thank you.
Congrats, bro.
Yep. Drew, thank you so much for coming out here, man.
Guys.
Till next time.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
Yep.